Kicked out for refusing the family business, I lived in my car, built software for small businesses, and turned it into my own company. What do you want to do? The sound of my father's voice shook the designer light fittings in our immaculate suburban kitchen. His face turned to a frightening purple, already red from his third scotch of the evening. I repeated, attempting to sound steady, that I want to launch a software company. I've created a prototype already. This platform is beneficial to small enterprises. He slammed his glass flat and said, absolutely not. We didn't pay for your Stanford degree so you could waste your life on some pipe dream. You're joining the family business? End of discussion. I looked to my mom for encouragement. She remained motionless at our marble island, keeping her customary cautious distance from confrontation. It gleamed on her wrist, the diamond tennis bracelet I'd given her for Christmas, purchased with my earnings from covert freelance coding assignments. Mom, I attempted. You've seen how many small businesses are struggling with digital transformation. My platform could really help. She groaned and looked at her manicure. Ethan, she said. Your father's right. This tech obsession of yours, it's not practical. Sterling Enterprises needs you. The company's been in the family for 3 generations. In reality, they meant that our family's industrial supply company, Sterling Enterprises, was failing. They needed my programming expertise to update their antiquated systems so they could compete in a market that was digitizing quickly. But my aspirations were loftier. When I said, I'm not asking for money, I have savings, I just need some time. My dad said, I'll laugh. You want time to play with computers while real businesses are at stake? While your sister is already making partner at her law firm? Yes, Claire, my ideal elder sister. The benchmark by which all of my shortcomings were evaluated was Harvard Law, the youngest partner in her firm's history, and she was married to a physician. I insisted, this isn't playing. I've already got interest from potential clients. Small businesses need affordable software solutions, and the big tech companies aren't serving them. My platform was chilled by my father. Just inches from my head, the glass broke against the wall. My father yelled, enough, as liquor trickled down the pricey wall covering. You have a choice, join Sterling Enterprises on Monday or get out. See how long you last without our support. Despite flinching at the sound, my mother remained silent. She didn't. I glanced at both of them, my mother averting my gaze, my father shaking with anger. The choice I made would alter everything. Remarkably composed, I got up and said, I choose out. What, I'm leaving? Good luck modernizing Sterling Enterprises without me. You ungrateful. I was on my way upstairs when my father began to approach me. This was a moment I had anticipated. Essentials like a laptop, a portable hard drive, and 2 changes of clothes were already in my backpack. I had a safety deposit box where I kept my vital paperwork. My parents couldn't access the account where I kept the majority of my savings. My dad yelled up the stairs, you have an hour? Then I want you out of this house. I retrieved my favorite hoodie, my emergency pack, and a final glance at my childhood bedroom. My trophies from coding competitions, science fair prizes, and the framed article about the high school software I created that attracted Stanford's notice were still on the wall. It buzzed on my phone. Finn, my best friend, texted me. Operation Escape still on? Happening now, I responded by typing. Plan B initiated. When I initially made the decision to follow my company goals, Finn and I had simulated this situation months prior. I could stay in his tiny flat above his family's eatery until I was able to support myself. My mother eventually spoke as I was about to leave. Ethan, please be reasonable. Your father only wants what's best. No, I interrupted her. He wants what's best for Sterling Enterprises. There's a difference. I left without turning around. It felt unreal the first night in my automobile. I parked on a quiet street 2 blocks away from my parents' house, far enough away that they wouldn't notice me but close enough to keep a solid connection to their fast Wi-Fi network, which I had set up and secured myself. The familiar rhythm of keyboards drowned out the voice in my head that told me I was making a big mistake as I continued to code on my laptop, which shone in the darkness. When Finn handed me food, he remarked, "You sure about this? Is Mother's incredible pad thai? My couch is still available." I shook my head and showed him my workplace, which included a laptop, a power bank for emergencies, and a mobile hotspot for backup internet. I need to stay mobile for now. Can't risk them finding me and trying to force me back. He looked at my computer screen. "What exactly are you building?" I displayed the interface of my prototype. I call it Smart Start. It's an all-in-one digital platform for small businesses. Point of sale, inventory management, customer relationships, online presence, Everything they need to compete in today's market, but simplified and affordable, like what your dad's company needs. Similar, but designed for smaller businesses that can't afford enterprise solutions. I reflected on all the neighborhood stores I had witnessed struggle and fail due to their inability to adapt to the digital revolution. There's a huge market being ignored by big tech. Finn gave a slow nod. A cash register from the 1990s and paper order tickets were still in use at his family's eatery. How long until it's ready? Basic version, 2 months. I've got most of the core functions working. Just need to polish the interface and add some features. I kept from him the fact that I was also surreptitiously recording every flaw in Sterling Enterprises systems, including every security flaw, inefficiency, and lost chance for technological advancement. I was creating it because I knew they would need it someday, not because I was spiteful. They simply weren't aware of it yet. Life fell into an odd pattern. I would work from several coffee shops over the day, purchasing just enough to warrant using their Wi-Fi and space. I would park close to my parents' house at night and utilize their fast internet to upload code and execute intricate tests. Coffee, protein bars, and leftovers from Finn's family were my main sources of nutrition. I learned which parking lots were safe to sleep in and which ones to avoid, and I took a shower at a cheap gym membership. Although uncomfortable, it served a useful purpose. I could devote all of my attention to creating Smart Start if there were no outside distractions, no incessant criticism from my father, and no passive disappointment from my mother. My sister Claire attempted to step in one weekend. "This is ridiculous, Ethan," she said after finding me at the coffee shop where I usually go. "You're living in your car to prove what? That you can be as stubborn as Dad?" I continued to code without looking up. "I'm building something important. You're throwing away a guaranteed future with the family business." I stated plainly. "The family business is dying. Dad's too proud to admit it. But their systems are ancient. Their processes are inefficient. And their competitors are eating them alive." "Then help fix it," I said, finally looking her in the eye. "That's exactly what I'm doing, just not the way they want." She put a big envelope on my table before departing in frustration. $5,000 in cash was found inside, along with the words, "Don't be an idiot. Come home." I upgraded my coding tools and purchased a better laptop with the money. In the second month, the breakthrough occurred. A local bookshop, a family-run hardware store, and a developing food truck company were among the small businesses who approached me about beta testing Smart Start. They were all having trouble with the same issues that my platform was intended to address. The owner of the bookstore responded, "This is exactly what we need." Following my demonstration of the inventory management system. "QuickBooks is too complicated, and the custom solutions are too expensive. How much would this cost?" I gave her a price that made her smile. It was purposefully less than the going rate in order to encourage word of mouth. I had clients that were paying by the third month. Little sums, but consistent revenue. Enough to rent a little studio apartment, but I didn't include it in the lease so my parents wouldn't find out. Then came the call that made all the difference. The authoritative, business-like voice said, "Is this Ethan Sterling?" "Yes, this is." "Owen Grant from Zenith Ventures. We've been hearing interesting things about your Smart Start platform." My heart stopped beating. One of the nation's most prominent early-stage investors was Zenith Ventures. One of our portfolio companies mentioned your solution. Said, "It's exactly what the small business market needs. Would you be interested in discussing potential investment?" I tightened my hold on my phone as I recalled all the evenings I spent coding in my car, the meals I skipped to gain server time, and the uncertainties and anxieties I had set aside in order to follow this goal. "Yes," I said. "I would definitely be interested." At the time, I had no idea that this talk would start a series of events that would not only confirm my vision but also confront my family's financial failures in a way that neither of us could have anticipated. My father would have approved of the Zenith Ventures office, which was located on the top level of a shiny downtown tower. I tried not to look like someone who had been living in his van 2 months prior, rearranged my one nice suit, and purchased used items for investor meetings. Owen Grant had the easy assurance of someone who had made his wealth in the first boom, and he was younger than I had anticipated, possibly in his early 40s. "Walk me through it again," he urged, pointing to the enormous screen in the conference room that was showing my Smart Start demonstration. I launched the user interface, which had grown as recognizable as my own image. Small businesses are drowning in digital complexity. They need e-commerce, inventory management, customer relationship tools, but existing solutions are either too expensive, too complicated, or too limited. The point of sale, inventory management, customer communications, and even basic analytics were all connected and easy enough for anyone to use, and I showed how a small business owner could set up their complete digital presence in less than an hour. And this scales? Was Owen's full question. The architecture is cloud-based, modular. We can add features as businesses grow, integrate with other platforms, but the core stays simple. Slowly, he nodded. And your current users? 28 paying customers, all from word of mouth, 0 churn rate. Average user engagement is 4 hours daily. That's impressive. He displayed a second screen. My company's incorporation documents. Innovative Solutions LLC, registered 6 months ago. Yes. All self-funded so far. He looked closely at me. You're Charles Sterling's son. My heart skipped a beat. You know my father? He looked contemplative as he said, Sterling Enterprises was one of my first investments back in the day, before your father bought out the minority shareholders. They're having trouble adapting to digital markets, I hear. I maintained a neutral expression. I wouldn't know. I'm not involved with Sterling Enterprises. He tapped his iPad, and a fresh document showed up on the screen. Interesting. We'd like to offer you seed funding, $2 million for a 20% stake. I made an effort to hide my trembling hands. $2 million was more money than I ever thought I would have. Owen went on. There's one condition. We want you to expand your focus. Small businesses are good, but mid-sized enterprises need these solutions too. Companies like, say, Sterling Enterprises. And there it was. The trap I dreaded and had been anticipating. You want me to target my family's business? He gave a small smile. I want you to target a market segment that desperately needs modernization. The fact that your father's company might benefit is incidental. I reflected on the numerous evenings I had parked outside my folks' house, utilizing their Wi-Fi to construct something they rejected. Regarding my mother's quiet and my father's fury. About the small enterprises that Smart Start has already helped flourish. I'll need full control of the company's direction, I replied. No interference with the core mission. He slid a folder over the table and said, Of course. Have your lawyers review it. But Ethan, don't wait too long. This market won't stay open forever. 3 days later, after going over every detail with my sister Claire, who was still a better lawyer than she realized, I signed the contract. You're really doing this, she remarked as she returned the documents with the annotations. Going directly against Dad's business? I'm building something that could save his business, I replied. If he's willing to see it. She gave a headshake. You know he won't, not coming from you. Of course, she was correct, but I also had a strategy. Scaling up over the next 6 months was a blur. I would have given my mother a heart attack if I had rented actual office space in a converted warehouse. Hired salespeople, designers, and developers. When Finn took over as head of customer success, his knowledge of small business owners proved to be quite helpful. Smart Start expanded more quickly than Owen had anticipated. Business circles began to hear about the platform that truly lived up to the hype. From dozens to hundreds to thousands, our user base grew rapidly. Finally, the tech press took notice of us, and then came the piece that made all the difference. Digital David versus Goliath, How Smart Start is Disrupting Enterprise Software. The article commended our ability to assist small firms compete with larger corporations, our creativity, and our emphasis on user experience. The fact that I was Charles Sterling's estranged son was also mentioned, almost as an afterthought. Minutes after the piece went up, my phone rang. Claire. She said. Dad's furious. Without introducing herself. He's calling an emergency board meeting. Why? Smart Start isn't competing with Sterling Enterprises. No, but 3 of their biggest customers just announced they're switching to your platform. Stunned, I reclined. I hadn't observed that mid-sized organizations were beginning to use Smart Start because we've been so focused on tiny enterprises. There's more, insisted Claire. Their latest quarterly numbers, they're bad. Ethan, really bad. The board is talking about forcing Dad out if he doesn't modernize their systems. I retrieved the public financial information for Sterling Enterprises. The figures were worse than I had anticipated. Within 6 months, their stock had fallen 40%. The rate of customer attrition was increasing. They were practically on the verge of going bankrupt due to their antiquated software systems. They need help, I muttered aloud. They need you, she said. But you know Dad will never admit it. Owen Grant's remarks regarding focusing on mid-sized businesses and the several elements we included in Smart Start that may help businesses like Sterling Enterprises were on my mind. Perhaps, I replied softly, they don't have to recognize me. I called an emergency team meeting that evening. I revealed the prototype I had been working on covertly, A new division aimed at larger companies that was based on the Smart Start architecture but had extra capabilities for intricate operations. We're launching enterprise solutions, I said. Finn scowled. I thought we were staying focused on small business. We are. But there's a whole segment of mid-sized companies being crushed between small business agility and big corporation resources. They need what we've built. I neglected to mention that every feature in Enterprise Solutions was created especially to address the issues facing Sterling Enterprises. That I had devoted months to examining their shortcomings and developing fixes for problems they were unaware they had yet. For weeks, the team worked non-stop. We introduced Enterprise Solutions under a different name through a subsidiary that was difficult to link to me. Similar to Sterling Enterprises, the marketing campaign focused on well-established enterprises who were having difficulty embracing digital change. We waited after that. It took very little time. Days after our launch, the new Chief Technology Officer of Sterling Enterprises, who had been hired in a panic following their most recent system failure, contacted us. The location of the meeting was their headquarters. I watched over a secure video link while my father and his board were shown enterprise solutions by our sales team, who were specifically selected to be unrelated to me. I witnessed his realization that this was precisely what they required. Saw him struggle to acknowledge it. Observed the enthusiastic inquiries from the board members regarding cost and implementation. Our sales lead clarified, the investment would be significant but the potential return. My father cut me off, saying, we'll need to see other options. An elderly board member, Jonathan, leaned forward. We've seen 12 presentations in 2 months. This is the only solution that actually addresses our specific needs, and their track record, impressive results with similar companies. Another board member added their voice. My cousin's manufacturing business switched to their system last quarter. Saw immediate improvements. I saw the expression on my father's face as he knew he was losing the battle. Change was what the board desired. Their clients insisted on it. Their best chance of surviving was with enterprise solutions. Fine, he snarled. Start the procurement process. With an odd sense of emptiness, I shut down the video feed. I had succeeded. Produced just what was required by Sterling Enterprises. Confirmed that my vision was correct. Why, therefore, didn't it seem like a win? When Claire contacted again 3 days later, the response was received. She said, Dad's drinking, without introducing herself. Really drinking? Mom's talking about separation. Not because of Enterprise Solutions, but because he is aware of his failure. My gut nodded. He had to go pleading with outsiders for assistance because the business was collapsing. She hesitated. He keeps saying he should have listened to you. I reflected on all the decisions that had brought us to this point as I gazed out my office window at the metropolitan skyline. My pride, my father's intransigence, and the barriers of silence we established between us. What if, I thought to myself, there was a way to save both the company and his pride? How? I have an idea, but I'll need your help. The board meeting of Sterling Enterprises was set for 9 a.m. Thursday. I watched familiar faces stream into their offices as I waited in my car outside the exact location where I had parked to access their Wi-Fi. Last to arrive was my father, who appeared older than I had recalled. His suit, which was usually spotless, was a little rumpled. His stride was less assured than the one I had grown up admiring. I tapped my phone and asked, "Everything ready?" "All set," the woman said. "The board members are prepped. Owen Grant just arrived, and Mom's in position, though she's still not sure about this." I changed my tie. It was still not the brand my father would pick, but it was a designer now. It has to be today. The Enterprise Solutions contract needs board approval by the end of the week. "Good luck," replied Claire quietly. "Try not to enjoy this too much." Despite my nervousness, I grinned. She was too familiar with me. When I walked in, the security guard looked twice. I had been hauled away the last time I was here following another argument about entering the family business. I was back on my terms now. As I walked in, the boardroom became quiet. My dad's expression quickly changed from astonished to irate to perplexed. Owen Grant, who was seated close to the head of the table, simply nodded as though he had anticipated my arrival. My dad yelled, "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to discuss the Enterprise Solutions contract," I remarked coolly as I set my laptop down on the table. "This is a closed board meeting. Security?" "Actually," Owen replied softly, "Mr. Sterling is here at my request. As the majority investor in Enterprise Solutions, I believe his input is crucial to this discussion." My dad's face turned white. "You what?" My laptop displayed a similar UI when I plugged it in, but not Enterprise Solutions. I chose to show them the original Smart Start dashboard instead, which had my very first designs and notes. I started building this the day you kicked me out, I said, using your Wi-Fi. Actually, since I was living in my car at the time. The members of the board shuffled uneasily. My mom eventually turned to face me as she sat calmly in her typical corner seat. I went on. Smart Start grew faster than anyone expected. Small businesses loved it because it solved real problems simply and affordably. But I knew larger companies needed similar solutions. I moved to the interface for enterprise solutions. Every feature in this system was designed specifically to address Sterling Enterprise's challenges. The inventory management, the customer tracking, the integration capabilities, all built based on intimate knowledge of what this company needs. My father's voice was trembling with anger as he said, "You've been spying on us." "No," I replied. "I've been trying to save your company. The same company you wanted me to join, but only on your terms." Owen Grant cleared his throat. "The board has reviewed Mr. Sterling's proposal. Enterprise Solutions isn't just a software platform. It's a potential merger opportunity." My dad's head jerked up. "Merger?" I displayed the comprehensive merger proposal that I had been working on for weeks. "Smart Start technology would acquire a controlling interest in Sterling Enterprises," I said. "But the Sterling name stays. The legacy business continues, enhanced by modern technology. And the current CEO transitions to Chairman Emeritus, focusing on strategic partnerships rather than day-to-day operations." There was no sound in the room. My dad whispered, "You want to buy my company?" I clarified, "I want to save it. Transform it into something that honors its history while embracing the future. But it has to happen now, before the market completely passes you by." It was my mother who talked first. "Charles, listen to him." Startled, he turned to face her. She had never raised her voice in 30 years of board meetings. "I've seen what Ethan built," she added. "What he sacrificed to build it. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about family." "Family." He laughed loudly. "He abandoned the family business." "No," I muttered. "I found a different way to support it. Every feature, every innovation in enterprise solutions was designed with Sterling Enterprises in mind. Because despite everything, I never stopped believing in what this company could be." I approached his chair and opened a second document on my tablet, my initial business plan, which I had penned in my car the night after I was expelled. The subtitle was Project Phoenix, Modernizing Sterling Enterprises Through Independent Innovation. "You." He fixated on the paper. A dawn of recognition. "This was your plan all along?" "Plan B. Actually, Plan A was convincing you to modernize from within. But you weren't ready to listen then." Owen Grant got to his feet. "The board needs to vote on this merger proposal by the end of day. I suggest we take a brief recess to process this information." I was left alone with my father as everyone else filed out. He looked lost as he sat there looking over my business proposal. He finally questioned, "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have listened? Really listened, not just heard what you wanted to hear?" He remained silent for a while. "You built all this using our Wi-Fi." I couldn't contain my laughter. "That's what you're focusing on?" "No, he said, stroking his gray hair. "I'm trying to understand how my son went from living in his car to offering to buy my company in less than 2 years. The same way you built this company, by seeing opportunity everyone else missed, by working harder than anyone thought possible, by believing in something bigger than myself." Slowly, he nodded. "Your grandfather would have loved this. You know, he always said the best business lessons come from proving the skeptics wrong. I learned that from you. Actually, all those stories about how you built Sterling Enterprises, how you proved everyone wrong who said it would fail." I took a seat beside him. "I just did it my way instead of yours." The merger was approved by the board in a unanimous vote. After the longest delay of my life, my father cast his vote in favor. The changeover wasn't seamless. Particularly with family companies, change is never easy. However, Sterling Enterprises started to change gradually. The name was retained, but the brand was updated. My grandfather's fundamental business was maintained, but it was improved using technology to enable it to prosper in the digital era. Sterling's steadiness and Smart Start's inventiveness came together to create something that neither business could have done on its own. After a year, I sat in my father's office, which is now our office as he had finally agreed to become Chairman Emeritus. The quarterly figures we were examining had surpassed all expectations. "You were right," he abruptly remarked. I raised my head. "About what?" "About everything?" He looked directly into my eyes and said, "The technology, the market changes, the need to adapt." He pointed to the table displaying our most recent findings and said, "I was too proud to see it. Too afraid of losing control. And now I'm proud of what you built, what we're building together." It buzzed on my phone. Finn sent us a message regarding a possible new acquisition target. Another family firm in trouble that required precisely what we produced. I pulled up the plan and added, "Speaking of building," asking, "What do you think about expanding our enterprise division?" He grinned. The genuine smile I recalled from my early years, before anxiety and tension had hardened him. "Tell me more." Later that evening, I passed our former residence. There was still a robust Wi-Fi signal. They were unaware that I had changed their system last month. I reflected on that first night in my car, coding under the light of my laptop, driven by resentment, willpower, and the need to prove everyone wrong. I had discovered, however, that success was not about proving others incorrect. It was about establishing your own credibility and creating something so indisputable that even the most ardent doubters had to admit its worth. My mother reminded me to have family supper as my phone chimed once again. These were now routine occurrences, but the discourse had changed from judgment to sincere interest, from criticism to cooperation. I replied back, "Coming," since I couldn't help but send this over the Wi-Fi. She answered right away. "Very funny. Your father says bring the new acquisition proposal." And yes, he's actually smiling about it. Thinking of how far we'd come, from rejection to reunion, made me smile as well. From rivalry to cooperation. From surreptitiously utilizing their Wi-Fi to assisting them in embracing the digital future. Sometimes proving someone wrong isn't the greatest form of retaliation. It's giving them a whole new perspective on what's right. My mom and sister made me reject my dream job to support them, but I later discovered that my mom had illegally drained the college funds Dad left. Have you ever felt like your own family is purposely sabotaging your future? That is exactly what I, 22F, am struggling with right now. My mother, 45F, and sister, 19F, recently pushed me to turn down a fantastic job offer at a major tech company in San Jose, and I'm still trying to absorb what happened. Let me paint you a picture of how we arrived here. 2 years ago, my father died in a vehicle accident on his way home from work. He was the type of father who never missed any of my coding competitions or academic events, even when he was overburdened with work. Every Sunday morning, we had this custom where he'd cook his famous pancakes, which were simply regular pancakes with chocolate chips, but he was so proud of them. He'd tell us stories from his college days while flipping them and cracking us up with his bad dad jokes. Prior to the accident, our family life was not perfect, but it was stable. My parents had troubles, as do all couples, but they balanced each other out nicely. Dad was the calm, analytical kind who could settle any issue with his careful reasoning, whereas Mom was more emotional and impetuous. They made it work, and our home felt secure and predictable. Everything changed following Dad's death. It wasn't simply the evident loss, it was as if our entire family dynamic had collapsed. Mom became emotionally dependent on my younger sister Ashley, or perhaps the other way around. Regardless, they created a tight, even smothering bond that made me feel like an alien in my own family. Ashley became the focus of Mom's universe, while I was consigned to the role of the responsible one, expected to give up everything for the family's sake. I should clarify about Ashley. Even before Dad died, she was always the most theatrical member of the family. I was the quiet kid who spent hours coding in my room, while she was the social butterfly who required constant attention. Dad used to balance Mom's tendency to accommodate Ashley's every desire, but now he was gone, there was no one to provide a reality check. Their relationship evolved gradually but unmistakably. Ashley's little crises escalated into family emergencies. When she didn't make the cheerleading squad in her senior year of high school, her mother let her miss school for a week and maxed up her credit card with comfort items. When she didn't get into her first choice institution, Mom spent 2 weeks calling administrators and even applying for a loan to make a donation to the school. Meanwhile, I tried to keep everything together. I maintained a 4.0 GPA in computer science, worked part-time at the university's IT department to help pay bills, and cared for my younger brother, Tommy, 10 million. Tommy is such a sweet kid. He's the only one who still sees me as a real person, rather than a tool to be utilized when necessary. I graduated from college this year with a computer science degree, and against all chances, I received an incredible job offer from one of San Jose's top IT businesses. The interview process was harsh, with 6 rounds of technical interviews, coding challenges, and behavioral tests. I prepared for months, staying up late to learn algorithms and data structures while also fulfilling my family responsibilities. When I received the offer letter, I couldn't believe my eyes. The base salary was $125,000, plus a signing bonus and stock options that made my head spin. This wasn't simply a job. It was an opportunity to establish a legitimate career and possibly even aid my family financially. Once I was established, I could finally repay all of my student loans, which Mom couldn't co-sign for because she was too busy paying off Ashley's shopping bills. But last week, Mom entered my room with that expression on her face, as if she were going to explode a bomb that would destroy everything. She sat on my bed, took up the plush penguin Dad bought me for my 16th birthday, one of the few things I still have from him, and said, "Olivia, we need to talk about your job offer." My stomach immediately sank. She went on to tell me that Ashley was struggling with her first year of college and needed to take a vacation. She apparently has anxiety and needs to return home. This entails additional expenses, which Mom cannot handle alone. She advised me to ignore the San Jose offer and seek a local job instead so that I could help with the finances and care for Tommy. Ashley's worry manifests itself mysteriously when things don't go her way. She had no issue performing in a 3-hour dance showcase last month, but when her teachers required her to attend morning courses, she experienced crippling social anxiety. She can spend hours at parties with her friends, documenting every second to Instagram, yet she supposedly has panic attacks when it comes time to study for tests. I tried to reason with Mom. I spent hours showing her my financial plans, explaining how I would send money home once I had settled in, and even promising to assist Ashley in finding resources for her purported mental health difficulties. But Mom would not hear it. Family comes first, she kept stressing, as if my desires and goals were not important to the family's well-being. What is the worst part? While I was talking with Mom, Ashley was in her room, sharing images of her recent shopping trip on Instagram. The same sibling who claims she is too anxious to continue college spent hundreds of dollars on new clothes and makeup. I saw the receipts in her email. Yes, we have a family computer. She spent $876 at Sephora last week. That's more than I've spent on groceries in 2 months. When I pointed this up to Mom, she became defensive. Ashley is sensitive. She needs these things to feel better, she told me. You've always been the strong one, Olivia. You can handle disappointment better. That's when it struck me. I was the strong one in this family, which meant that my feelings and dreams were irrelevant. The following days were a flurry of anxiety and desperate planning. I contacted my college advisor, who was outraged by the scenario but couldn't provide much assistance. I called the company's HR department to explain my predicament and request additional time, but they could only extend the deadline by a few days. Without family assistance or a co-signer for an apartment contract in San Jose, my options were quickly dwindling. I even attempted to appeal to Mom's sensible side. I produced a detailed spreadsheet demonstrating how my San Jose salary will benefit the family more in the long run than a local job paying half the amount. I looked for local therapists that could help Ashley cope with her anxiety while still allowing her to attend school. I volunteered to schedule regular video conversations with Tommy to keep involved in his life. Nothing worked. How did Mom respond? Your father would be so disappointed in you for being so selfish. It stung more than anything else. Dad was the one who bought my first computer, stayed up late to help me debug my first programs, and always encouraged me to dream big. Using his memory to control me seemed like a new low. That's when something unexpected occurred. My Uncle James, 42 million, Dad's younger brother, arrived abruptly at our doorstep yesterday. He's always been the cool uncle who pays attention, but we hadn't seen much of him since Dad's burial. He'd apparently been trying to call Mom for weeks, but she was ignoring him. He looked at my face and knew something was amiss. While Mom was preoccupied with Ashley's current crisis, she was crying because someone had unfollowed her on Instagram. Uncle James and I sat on the back porch, where Dad used to educate me about constellations on clear evenings. I told him everything. I told him about the job offer, Mom's demands, Ashley's spending habits, and how I felt as if my future was slipping away. Tommy came out to join us as I was speaking, cuddling up next to me as he often does when he notices I'm angry. He's incredibly perceptive for a 10-year-old. Tommy acquired Dad's quiet brilliance and empathy, whilst Ashley inherited Mom's dramatic tendencies. Since Dad's death, he has been my primary source of genuine affection in this house. Instead of simply sympathizing, Uncle James had a determined expression in his eyes, similar to how Dad would appear when he was solving a problem. Your dad would never have wanted this for you, he replied, his voice firm but gentle. Then he made me an offer that would change everything. He has a guest home near his business in a city about an hour from San Jose, and he's prepared to let me stay there for free until I get established. He even offered to co-sign any required loans. While we were conversing, I received a text from my probable future manager at the IT company. She stated she was impressed with my interviews and was excited to have me on the team. They are working on several cutting-edge AI initiatives that are completely aligned with my interests. Reading that message while sitting next to the lone adult who seemed to care about my future felt like the universe was sending me a signal. For the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful. However, when we informed Mom about this possibility, she exploded. The transition was sudden and frightening. She transformed from the passive-aggressive manipulator I had become accustomed to into someone I hardly knew. She accused me of leaving my family, called me selfish, and then dropped a bombshell I didn't see coming. "You're just like your father, always putting yourself first." Uncle James intervened quickly, telling Mom she was out of line. He reminded her that Dad had worked tirelessly to support this family. That he had taken the late shift at work, the one he was driving home from when the tragedy occurred, in order to pay for Ashley's dance lessons. The fight that followed was heated, with Ashley joining in to call me selfish and Tommy crying in the corner. The things Mom said during that dispute indicated a lot about how she truly regards me. Apparently, I was always difficult, even as a child. My concentrate on academics rather than socializing was unusual. Even my decision to study computer technology rather than something more suitable for a girl was indicative of my defiance. It seemed as if years of animosity had finally been released. I'm currently sitting in my room, surrounded by half-packed boxes. Uncle James demanded I begin packing just in case, and I'm now trying to figure out what to do next. On one side of my laptop screen, there is a job offer letter, and on the other, there are San Jose apartment ads. The deadline is tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Uncle James is downstairs, ready to assist me if I decide to move out. But Mom's warning to cut me off completely if I leave still rings in my ears. Tommy left a note under my door a few minutes ago. In his shaky handwriting, he wrote, "I love you, Olivia. Dad would want you to be happy." I'm trying not to cry on the page while I type this. I realize this is long, but I needed to get it out. I understand that this is tricky, but am I wrong in wanting to take advantage of this opportunity? Should I give up my work to keep the family at peace, or should I accept Uncle James' offer and risk ruining my connection with Mom and Ashley? I've spent my entire life being responsible, dependable, and willing to make sacrifices. For once, I'd like to select myself. But my guilt is eating me alive. What if Mom is correct? What if I'm being selfish? I will provide an update after I have reached a decision. My hands are shaking so terribly that I can hardly type this. Thank you for reading. If you've made it this far, any advice is welcome. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd want to thank everyone who left positive comments on my previous post. Your remarks provided me the strength to make a decision. I chose to accept the job offer and seek Uncle James' assistance. But what occurred next completely surprised me. The morning after I made my decision, I got up early to begin transferring my belongings. Mom and Ashley weren't talking to me, as I expected. I didn't expect to see my laptop missing from my desk. Following a frenzied hunt, I discovered it in Ashley's room. She attempted to send an email denying my employment offer from my account. Thankfully, she was unaware of the two-factor authentication I had set up. When confronted, Mom defended her. Ashley was just trying to protect our family. That was the moment I knew I had made the correct decision. Uncle James helped me load everything into his vehicle while Mom and Ashley watched from the window, not even coming down to say goodbye. Only Tommy ran out to hug me, putting his favorite action figure in my pocket and murmuring, "For good luck." The drive to Uncle James' house was relatively peaceful. He didn't force me to communicate, just let me analyze everything while my favorite indie rock station played softly in the background. It reminded me of drives I used to take with Dad to clear my mind. Getting situated in the guest house was weird. It's little but ideal for me, a studio with a tiny kitchen and a workstation by the window. Uncle James had already set up a workstation for me, complete with 2 monitors. "Your dad would have wanted you to have the right setup," he told me. The true shock occurred as I was organizing my documents for the new employment. I discovered an old envelope in Dad's work briefcase that Uncle James had kept in storage. Inside were letters from Dad to each of us kids, intended to be opened when we turned 25. I know I shouldn't have opened mine so early, but with everything going on, I needed some connection with him. The letter altered everything. Dad described his own experiences with family pressure. When he was younger, his parents wanted him to take over their modest business, but he chose to study engineering instead. He wrote about how happy he was of my interest in technology and hoped I'd have the fortitude to pursue my aspirations, even if it meant making difficult decisions. But there was something else in the envelope. Bank statements indicating that Dad had established a separate savings account for my college tuition. I never known about this account. It had enough money to cover at least 2 years' tuition. When I showed these to Uncle James, his expression worsened. He made several calls and discovered that Mom had somehow gotten access to this account after Dad died and fully depleted it. I started a new job yesterday. The staff is great, and the projects are even more exciting than I anticipated. My boss personally led me around and introduced me to everyone. During lunch, she mentioned that she had been pulling for me since my interview, especially when I solved a particularly difficult coding problem in an unusual manner. Mom has been phoning non-stop since I left, leaving voicemails alternating between guilt and rage. Ashley wrote a lengthy diatribe on social media about how I had abandoned the family. I've blocked them both for now. I need room to concentrate on my fresh beginning. Uncle James helped me open a separate bank account from Mom's, and I'm learning about financial independence from a coworker who also offers personal finance classes. I am also looking at therapy choices that are covered by my new health insurance. The toughest part is missing Tommy. We video chat every night before his bedtime while Mom attends her evening yoga session. He had been telling me about his science project, and his eyes brightened up when I offered to help him code a simple game for it. I keep rereading Dad's letter anytime I'm feeling guilty. One line in particular stands out. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose your own path, even when others try to hold you back out of their own fear. There's more to look into with the education fund, and Uncle James is assisting me in gathering information. I'll provide another update once I have more information. For the time being, I'm focusing on learning my new work and creating my new life, one day at a time. Update number 2. It has been 3 weeks since my previous update. I regret for the delay, but what I discovered necessitated thorough investigation and legal consulting before I felt safe publishing. Remember the college fund that I mentioned discovering in Dad's papers? Uncle James and I have spent the past few weeks trying to figure out what happened to that money. What we discovered was far worse than we had feared. With the help of Dad's old bank colleague, we discovered that Mom had not only accessed one account, but had systematically depleted multiple accounts Dad had set up. There was a college fund for me, another for Tommy's future schooling, and a general emergency fund. All were emptied within months following Dad's death. Last week, Mom sent me a lengthy email. She sought to get ahead of the narrative, indicating that she was aware we were investigating. The email began with a half-hearted apology for possibly being too harsh, but gradually evolved into something else entirely. She left a message. There's something you need to know about your father. When I was pregnant with you, he had an affair. The note went on to explain how she uncovered the affair, how Dad begged forgiveness, and how she graciously accepted him back. She said that this was why she was always aloof from me, because I reminded her of that difficult time. She concluded by offering that if I discontinued my research into the accounts, we could focus on repairing our relationship. Here's the thing, her story didn't add up. Uncle James and I dug through Dad's old records and discovered something unusual. While Mom alleged Dad was having an affair, he was actually working double shifts to pay off Mom's credit card debt. We discovered old credit card statements with enormous charges from that time period, all made by Mom. The major surprise occurred when we realized Dad's old email address was still operational. We discovered years of correspondence with his lawyer discussing his concerns about Mom's spending habits. He had been recording everything, safeguarding valuables, and opening separate accounts for his children's future. He was not having an affair. He was attempting to shield us from Mom's fiscal carelessness. The emails also revealed something heartbreaking. Dad had planned to leave Mom, not for another woman, but because he was concerned about her influence on the kids. The accident occurred only 2 weeks before he planned to file for divorce. I took all of this material to the lawyer that Uncle James recommended. She was appalled. Apparently, what Mom did with the accounts following Dad's death was not only immoral, but unlawful. She had fabricated documents to obtain access to accounts that she was not permitted to touch. The lawyer discovered something else concerning. Ashley's alleged college fees, which Mom had stated as the reason she required my assistance. The majority of that money went toward shopping sprees and luxury things. We discovered credit card bills indicating purchases at high-end retailers, spa treatments, and even a secret spring break trip to Cancun, all while Ashley was allegedly too anxious to attend lectures. I spent hours scrolling through Ashley's social media posts, chronicling every extravagant purchase, luxury vacation, and shopping spree. The time frame coincides exactly with the loss of monies from Dad's accounts. Mom wasn't just allowing Ashley's behavior, she was sponsoring it with money that was legally intended for all of us. The lawyer claims we have a good case of financial fraud. The data left by Dad, together with the paper trail of Mom's activities following his death, creates a clear picture of systematic theft and deception. Tommy's predicament is what concerns me the most right now. He's still living in that toxic environment, seeing Mom and Ashley spend money that should have gone for his future. Uncle James is exploring our options for obtaining custody. The lawyer believes we may have a case, particularly given the financial malfeasance. I have not responded to Mom's email yet. The lawyer advised against any direct communication at this time. But Mom and Ashley must have sensed something is amiss because they've launched a social media smear campaign against me, portraying me as an ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family for a high-paying tech career. The truth is that learning of Dad's impending divorce has been both painful and validating. Painful because Dad died before he could shield us from Mom's destructive actions. Validating, because it proves he witnessed what was going on. He was not immune to Mom's manipulation and financial abuse. He was actively attempting to stop it. I'm preparing all of the documentation for legal action. Uncle James has been great throughout this process, spending countless hours assisting me in building our case. My employment is going well, and my team has been understanding of my need for occasional personal time to deal with things. The coming weeks will be critical as we move forward with legal processes. I'll post another update when I can, but for the time being, I need to focus on constructing our case and staying emotionally healthy through it all. My company's health insurance provides therapy, so I started seeing someone to help me digest things. At least I now know the truth. Dad was not the villain in Mom's story. He tried to be our hero to the end. Update 3. The previous 6 weeks have been a blur of legal proceedings, life changes, and final decisions. What began with discovering Dad's buried letter has resulted in a full overhaul of our lives. The court case moved quickly, thanks to the tremendous evidence we had. The judge was particularly concerned about Mom's methodical depletion of Tommy's education money. The most incriminating evidence came from Mom's scrupulous record-keeping. She had documented every unlawful transfer in her personal planner, most likely never expecting anyone to discover it. When Mom was presented with the evidence in court, her veneer finally shattered. She admitted to everything. Forging paperwork to get into Dad's finances, misusing the insurance funds, systematically concealing financial records. The judge's decision was straightforward. Full restoration of all diverted cash, plus interest. Mom is currently facing criminal charges for fraud. Ashley's reaction was revealing. Instead of supporting Mom, she quickly distanced herself, claiming she had no idea where the money for her shopping spree came from. Her Instagram influencer hopes were dashed when the court ordered her to return all products purchased with misappropriated monies. The biggest success, however, was not a financial settlement, it was gaining custody of Tommy. When the judge recognized Mom's record of financial abuse and manipulation, as well as evidence of her continuous destructive conduct, she granted me interim custody, with Uncle James serving as co-guardian. Tommy moved in with me last week, and the difference is already evident. He's smiling more, sleeping better, and is enthused about the coding projects we're working on together. My career has accelerated in ways I never expected. My initiative has piqued the interest of high management, and I have been elevated to team leader. The steadiness of my employment and income played a crucial role in the custody decision. Mom made one final attempt at manipulation, vowing to forgive everything provided I dropped the accusations and returned Tommy. Her lawyer instructed her to stop when I provided recordings of her threatening phone calls. Ashley has been posting passive-aggressive posts about toxic family members and treachery, but her power has diminished since she was forced to return her costly outfit. She's moved in with a friend, refusing to live with Mom now that the money has run out. Uncle James has been my rock throughout this. He's helped Tommy set up his new room, located him a terrific school nearby, and even opened a new college fund for him, which Mom can't access. We have weekly family dinners where we talk about Dad's pleasant memories, which are slowly healing after years of manipulation. The guest house has become our home. Tommy's room is filled in science posters and programming flowcharts that we created together. He's joined a robotics club at his new school, and his passion reminds me of Dad. I started therapy to analyze everything, and it's helping me realize that none of this was my fault. Dad tried to protect us. And now I'm completing what he started. Looking back at my initial post, I can't believe how far we've come, from nearly giving up on my aspirations to now completely realizing them while providing Tommy with the secure home he deserves. Mother and Ashley's true colors were shown. But by losing them, we gained something far more valuable. Truth and freedom. To those who may be in similar situations, believe your intuition. If something feels off, it probably is. Sometimes the family you choose is more significant than the one you are born into. Thank you for giving me the courage to research while my world was collapsing. Your encouragement gave me the courage to fight for justice, not just for myself, but for Tommy and Dad's memory. You transformed our life. I paid my sister and her fiancé's rent for years, only to learn they mocked me behind my back. I cut them off, and karma hit. Yes, you heard that correctly. Rent. It wasn't as if they provided me with a place to reside. It was the opposite. I was sending them $800 each month to assist pay their home and bills. It all began roughly 3 years ago. Emma and her fiancé, Jared, were going through a difficult time financially. They were drowning in debt, and I could tell they were too proud to seek help. I had recently taken a job teaching high school. The salary wasn't terrific, but I wasn't married and didn't have any children, so I thought I could afford it. What's the point of having siblings? I offered to help them for a bit until they could get back on their feet. They were grateful, or so I thought. However, the interim arrangement dragged on. A month turned into 6. 6 months turned into 12. And then it hit me. 3 years of giving money every month, without fail. I restructured my entire life around it. No large purchases, no trips, simply living frugally to keep things going. Still, I did not complain. I knew I was doing the correct thing. Family comes first, always. Then followed the wedding announcement. They were finally getting married after all these years, and I thought, okay, this is a watershed moment. I secretly wished they'd tell me they didn't need my assistance anymore. Instead, Emma called me one day and asked if I could help with her wedding expenses. I'll never forget that call. I hesitated for a long time before telling her no. Emma, I already send you $800 a month. I can't do more than that, I told her. She became silent. I'm not sure what she wanted me to say, but I needed to draw the line someplace. Dad's birthday. The truth emerges. Fast forward 2 months to my father's birthday. We held a large family gathering at Grandma's place. It was the usual chaos, tons of food, kids running around, and folks debating whose barbecue sauce was superior. Emma and Jared appeared carefree. We were all in excellent spirits, enjoying beverages and discussing old family stories. Everything appeared normal. Toward the conclusion of the event, my grandmother approached and caressed my arm. "Brian, can we talk outside for a minute?" she said gently. I didn't think much about it. Grandma is known for her little heart-to-heart conversations. It can be life advice or simply a word of encouragement. I believed she was going to encourage me to settle down. She was always wondering when I was going to find a good girl and start a family. We strolled onto the porch, which was quieter. She looked around to ensure no one was listening in. Then she said something that struck me like a punch to the belly. "They made fun of you," she replied quietly. "Who?" I inquired, wondering. "Emma and Jared. They laughed behind your back." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" She paused before speaking. "They think you're stuck in life. That you'll never have a family of your own. That you're wasting your time trying to help them. They joke about how much you sacrifice while you live alone and struggle to be a teacher." I felt a tightness in my chest. I could not believe it. I had given so much for them, and this is how they perceived me? Some kind of loser who should be pitied and mocked at? I stood there in silence, taking in her words. Grandma stared at me with sad, knowing eyes. "Brian, you're a good man," she added softly. Grandma responded, "But you don't have to let them treat you like this. They're taking advantage of your kindness." I nodded, still stunned. What should I do with this information? Confront them in front of everybody? Ruin the evening? I was not going to let them have the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. Instead, I went back inside, smiled, and pretended everything was fine. I even clinked glasses with Jared when we celebrated Dad's birthday. However, within, everything had altered. I realized I couldn't continue living like this. Did they think I was a joke? Fine. Let's see how hilarious things get if the money stops rolling in. I wasn't going to lose my cool. I'd play it smart and keep it elegant. But they were soon to discover that I was no pushover. The fallout begins. The morning following Dad's birthday party, I awoke early, still thinking about what Grandma had said. Part of me wanted to call Emma immediately afterward and confront her, but I opted not to. I needed time to contemplate. Instead, I went about my usual business: coffee, lesson preparations, and grading papers. Business as usual. About a week later, Emma called me. "Hey, Brian. Just checking in," she remarked cheerfully, as if nothing were wrong. "Hey," I said, maintaining a neutral tone. She began droning on about wedding plans, flowers, guest lists, and an issue with the caterer. I let her speak for a while. Then she casually mentioned money. "Oh, and Jared was wondering if you could send this month's rent a little early. We have a few things coming up." I had to fight myself not to chuckle. "Yeah, about that. I'm actually going through some financial stuff myself," I commented. "I won't be able to send the money this month." There was a pause. "Wait, you mean just this month, right?" You'll still help us after that? I don't know, Emma. I've been helping for 3 years. I might need to focus on my own situation for a while. She remained silent for a moment. Then I noticed her voice thicken. Brian, are you serious? We're counting on this money. Yeah, well, I was counting on my family not laughing behind my back. Another prolonged stillness. I didn't elaborate, and she never asked what I meant. Instead, she uttered a stiff, okay, and abruptly terminated the phone. That marked the beginning of the fallout. The family pressure. 2 weeks have gone by. I didn't hear from Emma again, but I knew something was up. Then, one night, my mom called me unexpectedly. Brian, I just talked to Emma, she said, and I could see she wasn't happy. She says you stopped helping her with her bills. What's going on? I exhaled. Mom, I've been sending them $800 a month for 3 years. It's not like I owe them anything. Well, yeah, but they're family, and Emma said you've been acting distant. Did she also mention that they've been making fun of me behind my back? I asked her. That silenced her for a second. What are you talking about? I told her what Grandma said. For a time, there was only astonished stillness on the other end. Finally, she spoke again, this time in a gentler voice. Brian, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. You've done more for them than anyone could have expected. If they're treating you like this, I understand why you're upset. It was a relief to hear her say that. But I knew things were going to get ugly. The confrontation. Sure enough, a few days later, Jared called me unexpectedly. Hey, Brian, he said, his tone forced but courteous. Emma's really upset. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Is that right? I asked, maintaining my composure. Yeah, man, I don't know where you're getting these ideas, but we've never said anything bad about you. You've been great to us? Oh, so Grandma just made that up? I inquired honestly. Jared stammered for a second. Look, if she said something, it was probably twisted. You know how old people can exaggerate. I didn't believe it for a second. You know what, Jared? Let's not pretend. I'm done with the money. You guys are on your own. I hope the wedding goes well. I hung up before he could argue. Grandmother's revelation. The real kicker arrived a few days later, when I received a call from Grandma herself. Brian, honey, can you come over? I have something to show you, she said to him. Curious, I went to her residence. She walked me into her study and gave me an old family photo album. I was going through some things and found these, she explained with a slight smile. I flipped through the pages and came across a collection of childhood images of me, Emma, and Jared. Then I noticed something unexpected. A letter slipped between the pages. It was from more than 20 years ago, before I was even born. Grandma, what is this? I questioned, pulling it out. Read it, she replied softly. The letter came from my late grandfather, and it detailed a hidden trust fund he had established for his grandchildren, to be distributed equally. Unless one is found to be abusing the family bond. Emma and Jared don't know about this, Grandma continued quietly. But I think you should. I sat there, startled. It wasn't simply about money anymore. This was about setting boundaries. And perhaps karma was about to catch up with them. The fallout escalates. Grandma showed me the letter, and I had a lot to think about. My late grandfather had established a trust fund for all of us, but she did not disclose how much money was in it. She made it obvious that no one else in the family knew, not Emma, Jared, or my parents. Why are you telling me this now? I questioned her. Grandmother gave me a knowing glance. Because I want you to understand something. You're not the failure they make you out to be. You've worked hard, sacrificed for others, and shown more integrity than most people ever would. This fund, it was meant to reward people like you. I nodded carefully, absorbing her words. I didn't want to rush into anything based on this new information, but it was comforting to know that I had some concealed leverage. Emma and Jared panic. The drama became more intense during the next week. Emma and Jared were panicking, I learned through the family grapevine. I believe limiting their monthly allowance affected them harder than I expected. Jared's work hours had been reduced, and Emma was having difficulty paying some of the wedding providers. I assumed they would figure it out. Instead, they began attempting to guilt other family members into giving them money. It backfired spectacularly. My mother stated to one of her sisters that I had been financially supporting Emma and Jared for several years. Word spread immediately. Everyone in the family found out pretty quickly. My Aunt Laura, who never holds back, supposedly ripped into Emma during a family function I wasn't even attending. You let Brian pay your bills for 3 years, and now you're playing the victim? Are you serious? She allegedly said. Emma loses it. Emma called me later, enraged. What the hell, Brian? Did you tell everyone about the money? No, I said quietly. I only told one person. And you brought this on yourself. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? She asked. Emma, I think you have bigger problems than embarrassment, I told you. Maybe look in the mirror and ask yourself why you believed it was acceptable to treat me as a joke. She did not have a response. I assumed that was the end of it, but Jared decided to push things. He must have been desperate because he showed up unexpectedly at my school one afternoon. He waited for me in the parking lot. Brian, we need to talk, he replied, trying to seem calm but clearly agitated within. About what? I asked, crossing my arms. Look, man, Emma has been crying nonstop. People are turning against us. We just want to make things right, he explained. Oh, you want to make something right now? After 3 years of taking my money while laughing behind my back? I shake my head. No thank you, Jared. I am done being your safety net. His cheeks reddened. You act as if we intended to hurt you. It wasn't like this? So, how was it, Jared? I interrupted. Explain to me how ridiculing someone who helps you isn't intended to hurt them. He did not have a positive response. Instead, he muttered something about how everything was a misunderstanding and walked out. Dad steps in. Later that night, I received a call from my father. He rarely participates in drama, so I knew this was serious. Brian, he explained. I had a lengthy conversation with Emma and Jared. They are struggling right now, but they regret how they treated you. That's good, I replied frankly. But I'm not interested in fixing things right now. They need to solve their own difficulties. Dad exhaled. Look, I am not saying you are incorrect. You've been more than generous, but maybe it's time to sit down and have a serious conversation with them, clear the air. I thought for a moment. I'll think about it, I finally said. But deep down, I was not in a forgiving mood. They had been using me for several years. They'd have to prove they deserved another opportunity. And I wasn't going to make things easy for them. Our family meeting. About a week following my father's call, I received an invitation. Handwritten. That was odd. It came from Emma. She asked me to meet her and Jared at a coffee shop near their house for a family meeting. I contemplated going, but curiosity got the better of me. I assumed I'd listen to them, despite my low expectations. When I arrived, the cafe was almost completely vacant. Emma and Jared were already there, looking a little overly prepared. Emma wore a phony smile, and Jared fidgeted with his phone. Emma remarked, Hey, thanks for coming, as I sat down. Sure, what is this about? I asked, keeping it brief. Emma took a big breath. Look, we'd simply like to apologize. We shouldn't have talked about you that way. It was wrong, and we sincerely apologize. Jared nodded and joined in. We were agitated and told some horrible jokes. We didn't mean anything serious. I sat back and observed them. It all felt too polished and scripted. Okay, I said. But let me ask you a question. If Grandma hadn't told me, would you have ever apologized? They froze for a second. Emma looked to Jared, who swiftly spoke out. Of course we would have, eventually. I chuckled. Right. Sure. They shifted uncomfortably. That's when Emma revealed the true reason for the meeting. The favor, Brian, we need a favor, she explained cautiously. There it was. I almost laughed aloud. Let me guess. You need money. Not exactly. Emma responded nervously. We need you to co-sign a loan for us. I stared at her like she had a second head. Are you serious? We've struck a hard patch, Jared explained. And we just need some help refinancing the house. If you co-sign, we'll obtain a better rate, and we'll handle the rest. You would not have to pay anything. I couldn't believe what I heard. You've got to be kidding me, I responded. You think I'm going to put my name on a loan for you after all this? Are you listening to yourself right now? Emma's face reddened. We are not trying to take advantage of you. We're working to make things right. I shook my head in astonishment. You don't solve problems by begging for more handouts. You fix things by accepting responsibility for your own lives. Jared threw his hand down on the table. You are being unreasonable, Brian. We are family. I laughed bitterly. Exactly. And family members do not treat each other like dirt. You are on your own. I got up, tossed a couple bucks on the table for my coffee, and went out without saying anything. The bombshell. A few days later, the unexpected news broke. Grandma called me, sounding shaken. Brian, you should come over right away. It's important, she remarked. When I got to her house, she handed me an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a letter from the bank regarding the trust fund. Emma and Jared had apparently caught wind of it and were attempting to demand a larger share, claiming that I had withheld family assets. They went to a lawyer, Grandma said, her voice shaking with fury. They say you hid the trust fund from them, even though you didn't know about it until recently. I was stunned. You've got to be kidding me. They are desperate, Brian. They're grasping for straws, she remarked. But this is low, even for them? Then it struck me. They weren't only struggling. They were sinking. And now they're willing to throw me under the bus to save themselves. I'm not going to let them get away with this, I stated forcefully. Grandma smiled a little sadly. Good. It's about time someone teaches them a lesson. An unexpected call. I wasn't done being surprised though. The next morning, I received a call from a lawyer representing Emma and Jared. I readied myself for a heated argument, but the lawyer sounded unexpectedly sorry. Mr. Daniels, he replied. I wanted to inform you that my clients have chosen to abandon their complaint. They'd like to handle the situation privately. Withdraw their claim? Why? There was an awkward moment. Let's just say some fresh information has surfaced about their financial predicament. I believe they knew they were in no position to pursue it legally. I couldn't help wondering what had happened. Later that day, I heard from Aunt Laura. Apparently, Jared was sacked when someone anonymously claimed that he had been embezzling minor quantities of company money. To make matters worse, the bank flatly refused their loan application, citing credit worries. Karma had struck them severely. And I had not even moved a finger. Emma's final attempt a few days after the trust claim disaster, I was still processing everything when Emma texted me. We should talk, please. I ignored her. The next day, she showed up at my residence unexpectedly. She was pacing outside my building when I returned home from work. I sighed and stepped out of the car. What do you want, Emma? I asked, already fatigued. She appeared frustrated. Brian, I didn't realize Jared was going to go this far with the lawyer. I swear I did not want this to happen. Did he panic? I scoffed. You were both perfectly happy attempting to rip me off with that trust fund. She stared down at her feet and did not refute it. I'm sorry. Okay? We've just been under so much stress. The wedding expenses, the house, everything is coming apart. I folded my arms. You know who's at fault, right? I shot back. Perhaps you wouldn't be in this situation if you hadn't relied on me for so long. She winced and then, unexpectedly, added, You're correct. But I have no one else to turn to. I looked at her in bewilderment. You don't understand, do you? I am done. I gave you years of my life and thousands of dollars, and you just laughed behind my back. Now you came here expecting me to save you again? Brian, you're my brother, she whispered quietly. We're supposed to look out for each other. Yeah? Where was that support when you and Jared made fun of me? When did you attempt to take it from me? She did not have a response. I shook my head. Emma, I'm finished. This will be our last conversation regarding money, trust funds, or anything else. I don't want anything more to do with you or Jared. Her eyes widened. You can't simply cut me off like that. We are family. Watch me. With that, I walked inside, leaving her standing there. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, but it was enough. Grandma takes a stand. The next day, Grandma called. She had heard everything, and nothing in our family keeps a secret for long. Brian, I want you to know something, she stated. I've decided I'm not going to talk to Emma or Jared anymore, at least not for a long time. I was startled. Grandma, you don't have to do that for me. I do, she stated firmly. You've been nothing but wonderful to them, yet they attempted to betray you. If they don't respect you, they won't respect me. They crossed the line, and I am not going to pretend differently. Hearing that from her meant more than I could express. Aunt Laura's news. A few weeks later, I received another surprise. I ran into Aunt Laura at the grocery store, and she took me aside. Hello, I heard about everything that happened. I just wanted to tell you how proud I am of you, she said. Proud of me? I asked, perplexed. Yes, you have finally stood up for yourself. Emma had a knack of manipulating people, but you didn't let her take advantage of you. I laughed. It wasn't easy, but I couldn't live like that anymore. You did the right thing. By the way, you might want to check in with Grandma. She's making some modifications to the trust fund. That grabbed my attention. Changes? Laura laughed. Let's just say Emma and Jared might not be included in the future plans. Grandmother's final decision when I saw Grandma a few days later, She verified it. I talked to the lawyer, she added, and I've determined that if Emma and Jared can't demonstrate responsibility and respect, they won't earn their share of the trust. I'm giving them the opportunity to change, but if they don't, the trust will be divided between you and your cousins instead. I was speechless for a moment. You don't need to do that, Grandma. I do not want any of the money. I know, she responded, smiling. That's why you deserve it. Cut ties for good. Following that, I cut off all communication with Emma and Jared. No texts, no calls. I banned their numbers and quit dealing with family drama. Things gradually became easier, and I had no idea how heavy my weight was until it was lifted. The actual kicker? Jared had moved out of the house after losing his job, and their relationship was on the rocks, so Emma had to return to live with her mother. I wasn't happy about it, but I couldn't ignore the irony. I was left at the altar when my fiancée ran off with my brother. 2 years later, she asked for my help, claiming she now saw the toxicity of my family. 2 years ago, I stood at the altar, ashamed and heartbroken. My fiancée ditched me an hour before the wedding and took off with my brother. I never saw it coming, or perhaps I overlooked the warning signs because I adored her. We had been together for 5 years, and I assumed we were happy. However, looking back, it is evident that I was unaware of many things. My family never treated me as a priority. My parents always favored my brother. He was the golden child, attractive, wealthy, and the type of guy everyone gravitated toward. I was the quieter one, always being compared to him, making me feel like I didn't measure up. Growing up, I was always asked why I couldn't be more like my brother. Or your brother did it, why can't you? I expected things to change as we got older, but they didn't. If anything, things grew worse. My fiancée had everything I wanted in a partner: intelligent, attractive, and determined. However, she had a selfish side. It wasn't clear at first. It manifested itself in little ways, such as insisting on always getting her way or never apologizing when she wounded my feelings. I dismissed it because I loved her and believed we were creating a life together. I never expected her to betray me the way she did. The wedding was meant to be the best day of my life. Everything was ready: the venue, the food, and the guests. I awoke nervous yet delighted, knowing that I would soon begin a new chapter with the lady I loved. Then, 1 hour before the ceremony, she called me. Her voice was calm, almost frigid, when she told me she couldn't do it. She stopped loving me. Then she revealed the true bombshell. She had been dating someone else. That person was my brother. She didn't even appear guilty about it. She stated she didn't want to hurt me, but she felt compelled to follow her heart. I didn't even have time to digest what she said before hanging up. My parents, who had already arrived at the event, knew. My brother had told them earlier in the morning. Instead of supporting me, they tried to keep things calm to avoid humiliating themselves. When I addressed them, they defended her. They said things like, "Maybe it's for the best, and you don't want to marry someone who doesn't love you." My mother even had the arrogance to advise that I be happy for them. My father was no better. He simply stood there and ordered me to keep it together. It wasn't until later that I discovered my parents' involvement in all of this. My brother had always been interested in her, and they seemed to think she was too good for me. They decided she would be a better fit for him. They had been urging her to select him for months, even offering her financial support if she left me for him. I had no clue my family could be that deceptive. I walked out of the venue that day without looking back. I left everything behind, including my family, friends, and hometown. I couldn't stand being near any of them. I went to another state and started again. I got a job, a little apartment, and spent the next 2 years repairing my life. At first, it was difficult. I knew no one, and the loneliness was overwhelming. But as time passed, I discovered serenity. I met new people, began treatment, and concentrated on myself for the first time in my life. I did not inform anyone where I was or how to reach me. I didn't want anything to do with those who had deceived me. Then, 2 years later, my ex-fiancée arrived at my home. I had just returned home from work, and when I opened the door, I could scarcely recognize her. She appeared fatigued and worn out, as if she hadn't slept or eaten properly in days. Her once confident and polished manner was gone. She shook and her eyes were red from sobbing. She told me that living with my brother had become a nightmare. He was manipulative, emotionally abusive, and disloyal. Behind closed doors, the beloved golden child turned out to be a monster. They had married shortly after our wedding catastrophe and had a child together, but their relationship had crumbled. My parents, who had previously been so willing to assist her, turned against her when she failed to achieve their expectations. She stated that she felt caged, alone, and terrified. She intended to divorce my brother but was scared of what he may do. He possessed money, contacts, and a vicious streak. She was afraid he would wreck her finances and take their child away. She approached me because she believed I could assist. She asked me to testify in court about how toxic and manipulative my family was. She believed my testimony would boost her case and help her keep custody of her child. I stood there, listening to her, angry. She had made her decisions. She knew exactly what kind of person my brother was, yet she picked him over me. She allowed my family to manipulate her and went away without looking back. And now, after everything she has put me through, she expects me to come to her rescue. I told her no. I did not yell or quarrel, I just said no. I closed the door. It felt nice. But it did not last. A few days later, the texts began. She managed to spread the news about her arrival. Old friends and even mutual acquaintances began reaching out to me. They labeled me selfish, spiteful, and cowardly for refusing to assist a woman in need. Her former maid of honor, the same girl who was meant to support her at our wedding, sent me a lengthy note about how I was not man enough to step up. She claimed I was confirming my family's point. That I was weak and did not deserve my ex in the first place. I couldn't believe their arrogance. These people had departed from my life following the wedding. None of them had spoken up for me back then, but now they believed they had the right to lecture me. I disregarded the majority of it, but it still stung. They had no idea what I had gone through. They didn't care. They simply wanted me to fix a situation that was not mine to fix. Now I'm wondering if I did the proper thing. I owe my ex-fiancée nothing. She created her bed, and now she must lie in it. But there's a youngster involved. An innocent child who didn't pick this situation. Part of me wonders if my refusal to assist will harm him in the long run. At the same time, aiding her would mean reintroducing my family and her drama into my life. And I am not sure I am willing to do it. Reddit, what would you have done in my position? Did I make the right decision, or am I also selfish? Update 1. I honestly didn't anticipate my post to get so viral. To be honest, when I originally started penning things out, I had no idea if anyone would care. But now I'm reading through hundreds of comments, some helpful, some difficult to read, and it's been a lot to comprehend. Thank you to everyone who has offered advice or simply expressed their thoughts. Whether you agree with me or not, I appreciate your support and diverse viewpoints. Writing all of this out has definitely helped me go through a lot of emotions and gain some clarity. But it's also brought out a lot of feelings I thought I'd buried deep down. After posting, I spent the rest of the evening reading the comments. Some individuals brought up points I hadn't considered, such as the possibility that getting engaged in my ex-fiancée's legal difficulties may exacerbate the situation. Not only for me, but for the child as well. Others were more direct, instructing me to keep as far away as possible. She created her bed. Now she may lie in it. Those statements helped me feel better about my first reaction to her turning up at my home. But then there were the ones who mentioned something different. The child. I know I don't owe anything to my ex-fiancée. But hearing so many people say, the child is innocent in all of this, really got to me. Many of you suggested that I try to do something for the kid without being drawn back into the poisonous mess that is my family. And it is what I have been struggling with ever since. I don't want anything to do with her or my brother again. I don't want to be the hero or decent guy in a situation where I'm only setting myself up for further heartbreak. But at the same time, I feel compelled to do something, even if it isn't for her. It's funny though. After reading so many of your comments, I began to wonder if there was anything I could do that wouldn't need me to communicate with her again or get dragged back into the drama. I even pondered phoning a lawyer to see what would happen if I testified or aided in some manner. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized. It's still not my responsibility to change anything. And especially not if it involves interacting with my poisonous family again. However, the guilt of knowing that the child is trapped in the center of this chaos persists. Then, like clockwork, my brother reappeared in the image. The email. Yesterday morning, I received an email from him. Yes, my brother, the one I haven't spoken to in 2 years. The last time we did this was when I canceled my wedding. His email was frigid, and simply reading it made my stomach plummet. It was short and to the point. I heard our ex-fiancée asked you for aid. This is a tremendous error. If you become interested, keep out of family matters. You'll regret it. I stared at the message for much too long. I was inclined to respond, but then I thought, why the hell should I? This guy is the one who forced me out of my own life. He was the one who perpetrated all of this manipulation with my ex. And now he believes he can tell me what to do? The arrogance. To be honest, I'm not sure if the word audacity is strong enough to describe how I feel about him. But I did not answer. I could not be bothered. It's almost funny how entitled he still feels. He has no idea what I've been through or what I've had to deal with over the years, and yet he believes he gets to decide how I should handle things. Number thanks. That was when the phone rang. An unknown number. And I am sure you can guess who it was. Yep. My mother. After 2 years of silence, she finally decided to phone me. The moment I picked up the phone and heard her voice, I was reminded of all the reasons I'd cut ties with her and my father. I didn't even get a "how have you been?" or "I miss you" before she got right into it. She began discussing the divorce, my brother, and how I needed to be the bigger person and maintain peace for the benefit of the family. That's when I snapped. I don't recall what I said, but I know I told her I didn't want to hear it anymore. She went on, however, about how difficult things were for my brother and how I was punishing the child by not intervening. I told her I didn't care and wasn't going to fix their mess anymore. I hung up after that. That conversation made me numb. For some reason, it reminded me of everything my parents had done to me, how they always favored my brother, how they tolerated his worst conduct, and how they always expected me to be the quiet one who simply accepted everything they threw at me. It has never been about me. Not once. I've always been the backup son, expected to deal with whatever trash came my way. Hearing my mother defend my brother again was like getting slapped in the face. It made me realize that nothing had changed, not with my parents or with him. And to be honest, it is why I am not returning. As tempting as it is to take the moral high ground, I know I'd only be perpetuating the toxic cycle. So, I'm finished. I've made peace with going away, but this situation has resurfaced many old scars that I thought were healed. As much as I want to block everything out and pretend it's not happening, I can't ignore the reality that the child is caught in the center of it all. I keep thinking about how helpless he must feel as he watches everything unfold. I know he is innocent, but what if he is being emotionally manipulated, as my ex was? It kills me just thinking about it. Still, I keep telling myself that this is not my struggle. I've already been through enough, and I'm not about to be drawn back into their drama. I've been sitting with these emotions for a few days, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wants to just move on, leave them to their mess, and walk away forever. But there's another part of me that wonders if I can aid the child without getting sucked back into the fray. I'm not sure what the correct move is yet. But I do know one thing: I cannot allow myself to return to the person I was before. The one who was always trying to make everything better for everyone else while ignoring my own needs. I worked way too hard to get here to be dragged back in. But the remorse over the child? Yes, it is still there. And it isn't going away anytime soon. How would you handle my situation? Would you help, or would you just walk away? I'm having trouble finding the right balance. Update 2. I figured things would calm down following my last update, but I was mistaken. Instead, things have become even worse, and I'm honestly wondering how I put up with these individuals for so long. I feel like the universe is putting my determination to the test. Every time I believe I've erected a tall enough wall to keep them out, someone finds a way to sneak over it or slip through a crack. Since my mother's call, I've been completely inundated. It began with a few texts from my extended family, including aunts, uncles, and cousins. And now it appears that they have all established a single front. They're coming at me from all sides, accusing me of damaging the family by not supporting my brother, or, worse, by remaining out of his family problems, despite the fact that I am doing just that. It's as if they believe I'm bound to get engaged simply because we share blood. Some of them have even accused me of holding a grudge and not being a man about it. I've been working hard over the last 2 years to restore my life and move on from the toxic disaster they created. They now believe I should abandon everything in order to return to the drama. It is exhausting. They don't understand that leaving away was not a choice made out of spite, but out of necessity. I couldn't keep living in that familial dynamic. It was suffocating. But they do not want to hear that. To them, family means unwavering commitment, even if it means sacrificing your happiness and well-being. On top of all the familial drama, I've begun receiving emails from my ex-fiancée. She's been sending them every few days now. I initially ignored them but ultimately caved in and opened one. I almost wished I hadn't, because they were all identical. She begs me to reconsider, emphasizing how much I can help her and her child. Each email is more urgent than the last, and she has even started sending photos of the child. I understand she's in a bad predicament, but the entire situation feels exploitative. She knows I'm not heartless, and I believe she's attempting to use that against me. She seems to know that if she tugs on my heartstrings, I will give in. The thing is, I am not stupid. I see what she is doing. But I can't deny it makes me feel guilty. I did not ask for those photos, and I did not want them. But she knows I'll look at them, and the child's face in those photos, with his little eyes looking up at me, guilt trips me more than anything else. I can't shake the feeling that I'm letting him down, although knowing that not becoming engaged is the correct thing to do. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, one of my old acquaintances contacted me unexpectedly. He's someone I haven't communicated with in years, but he obviously heard about the scenario through the grapevine. He called me late one evening, and when his name appeared on the screen, I almost didn't respond. I wasn't in the mood for another, "you should do the right thing" conversation, but I answered anyway. He didn't even waste time exchanging pleasantries. He stepped straight in, telling me to be the larger person and aid my ex-fiancée, even if it was simply to safeguard the child. He went on to say that I couldn't just let a child suffer because of my brother's actions. I'm not sure if he didn't comprehend the whole picture or if he just didn't care, but it was evident to me that he expected me to help simply because it was the moral thing to do. He depicted me as a monster for not immediately going to her rescue. I told him I couldn't help and that the matter was between her, my brother, and my family, not me. But he didn't hear it. He accused me of being stubborn, carrying grudges, and neglecting this child's needs. He made it sound as if I was abandoning someone who was obviously in need. But here's the thing, she's not the only person in need. I've spent so many years in this toxic environment, dealing with everyone else's problems but never my own. I am done with that. I quickly stopped the call, but it only made me feel more conflicted. I wanted to defend myself and explain why I wasn't going to get involved, but I didn't. I understand it is not my obligation to clean up this mess. I understand she and her family made their decisions, and they now have to live with them. But the guilt is still there. No matter how hard I try, it's been difficult to focus on anything else lately. I find myself questioning everything. I went out with some friends the other day to distract myself from the situation, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. One of them even joked that I was being a good Samaritan by not getting involved, which made me laugh. But it wasn't amusing. It only made me feel even more alienated. My buddies don't truly comprehend what I'm going through. The few friends I have left from my old life are either too afraid to speak up or simply believe I am doing the right thing. However, it does not feel right. Especially when a child is involved. I've also been thinking about how my ex-fiancée's situation could worsen if my brother and parents continue to press for full custody. I'm honestly not sure what could happen. My family has always been adept at manipulating the system, and I've witnessed them do so previously. I'm concerned that the youngster will be placed in a circumstance that is as horrible, if not worse, than what he is now suffering with. Despite these sentiments, I can't bring myself to get personally involved. So, I am still stuck. Part of me continues thinking that remaining out of it is the proper decision. But another part of me is questioning if I'm making the wrong decision. Will I live in regret if I don't help? And if I do help, would it only lead me back into their toxic world? This is a no-win situation. What would you do in my shoes? Would you aid the child, even if it meant reconnecting with your poisonous family again? Or would you keep your distance and let them sort things out for themselves? Update 3. After reading more of your comments and reflecting on the situation, I realized I couldn't sit back and do nothing, for the sake of the child. While I owe nothing to my ex-fiancé or my family, I understood that the child did not choose to be born into this situation. He is innocent. And if I have the means to help him escape the toxic environment that my brother and family have created, I should try. But I also realized that if I was going to do something, I needed to keep my peace in the process. I will not let them take me back into their world. I've worked too hard to rebuild my life and set boundaries, and I'm not going to give it all up for something out of my control. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it. Eventually, I came up with what I thought was the best compromise. I submitted an anonymous report to Child Protective Services, CPS. At first, I was unsure whether this was the proper decision. But as I thought about it more, it seemed evident that this was the only way I could possibly help without getting dragged back into the pandemonium. One evening, I sat down with all of the information I had. What my ex-fiancé had told me about my brother's behavior, how my parents treated her, and how toxic and manipulative the family dynamic had always been. I added all pertinent detail I could think of. I didn't simply talk about the physical and mental trauma my ex-fiancé had experienced. I also discussed how my brother's dominating behavior had impacted everyone around him, particularly her. I detailed how he had always used his charm to trick everybody, including my parents, into turning a blind eye to what he did. I made sure to explain how my parents had always supported him, making excuses for him and putting me aside in the process. I realized that if CPS was to investigate the incident, they would need to grasp the entire context of the child's surroundings. My brother's behavior was not the only issue. My family had always opted to enable his acts rather than hold him accountable. I also attached screenshots of some of the emails my ex-fiancée sent me. She had expressed her fear for herself and the child, her sense of being imprisoned in the marriage, and her lack of a support system. I knew I didn't have first-hand evidence of abuse against the child, but I hoped CPS would find enough in what I presented to launch an investigation. They might not be able to locate enough to intervene, but they would at least be aware of the situation. I needed to know that someone was watching out for the child, even if it wasn't me. Filing that report felt like a weight was lifted off my chest. It was the proper thing to do, but I didn't have to return to the craziness of my old life. I informed CPS that I wanted to remain anonymous and did not want to be contacted for follow-ups or participate in the case in any way. I did not want my name mentioned. I just wanted to make sure the kid was secure, and I felt if CPS thought my report had merit, they'd look into it further without my involvement. I did not expect immediate feedback or closure. CPS was unlikely to provide me with updates, and if they did, it would most likely be after they had done an inquiry. I was at ease knowing that I had done everything I could. I didn't have to reopen old wounds from my family's dysfunction, nor did I have to get caught up in their drama. At the end of the day, the report was the most effective thing I could do without jeopardizing my mental health or the life I'd worked so hard to rebuild. In the days that followed, I attempted to concentrate on moving forward, which is easier said than done. My family is relentless, and every time I think they'll leave me alone, another message or email appears. This time, it wasn't simply my mother and a distant cousin. This time, my brother reached out. And honestly, I didn't know how to answer. He sent me a short email accusing me of betraying the family and acting vindictively. He told me I was making a major mistake and would regret it. But there was something else about the tone of the message that made me pause for a moment. It wasn't simply anger. He was concerned. I did not even bother responding. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that everything he said was pure manipulation. It was not about him. It was about control. And I wasn't about to fall for it again. I've done this song and dance previously. It is always the same. They try to make me feel awful about setting boundaries and doing the right thing. But, in the end, they're the ones who caused this mess. I don't owe them an explanation anymore, for anything. I hadn't heard from my ex-fiancée in a few days, which was a relief, until yesterday, when I received one final email from her. It was short. Just a simple message that read, "Thank you. And I'm sorry for what I put you through." There are no details. No explanations. Only those words. It left me with mixed emotions. On the one hand, I'm relieved she acknowledged the pain she caused. But on the other hand, it made me realize how much she is going through. Perhaps something has changed in her situation, or she is finally recognizing the truth of her predicament. Regardless, it's evident that she's still battling. I don't know what will happen next in her custody struggle, but if there's even a slim chance she can get the child out of that harmful atmosphere, I hope it goes well for her. But I have to tell myself that I cannot get back engaged. I can't solve her problems. And I've already contributed significantly. Now it is up to the authorities. If CPS investigates and finds sufficient evidence to act, I will have done my part. If not, I'll have to admit that I can't control everything, no matter how much I want to. Final update. Thank you to everyone who has provided advice, encouragement, and even tough love. Your words helped me understand the big picture and gave me the confidence to act without second-guessing myself. And to anyone reading this who may be in a similar situation, it's okay to keep your peace. You can care for others while still maintaining your boundaries. Doing the right thing can sometimes entail taking a step back and allowing the system to work. You don't have to repair everything yourself. Do what you can and leave the rest to people who are more qualified to manage it. I'm not sure what will happen next, with my ex-fiancé, my brother, or any of this mess. But I know one thing. Whatever happens, I will be fine. I discovered my parents stole my $200,000 trust fund to support my sister. When I exposed them, they got furious and kicked me out of the house. To provide some context, my sister Corey has Down syndrome. She is 4 years older than me, and I've known for as long as I can remember that my sister was different from me in many ways. Even as a small child, I noted that Corey would respond strongly to every circumstance. If things didn't go her way, even in minor ways, she would scream and weep in a manner that most children did not. It was as if she couldn't take the frustration of things not living up to her expectations. Growing up, Corey had no pals. She had difficulty picking up on social cues and frequently came across as abrupt or even rude. While she wasn't trying to be impolite, her directness could be off-putting to other children who didn't comprehend her situation. As a result, many youngsters preferred to maintain their distance, leaving her feeling alienated. As a result, my parents made it a point to include me in her social life, frequently reminding me that I needed to bring her along when I went out with my friends. I realized they wanted her to feel included and have someone to interact with, so I didn't mind having my elder sister along. I felt it would be wonderful for her to have some company, and perhaps even make a few friends through my own social circles. However, spending time with Corey in the company of my friends was not easy. Her social skills were weak, and she struggled to integrate into groups. She often acted out in unexpected ways. She would occasionally push or even strike other children, especially if they had something she wanted. As a result, over time, my pals were less interested in hanging out with me if Corey was also around. They didn't want to deal with her unpredictable behavior, and I understood why. They were merely kids who wanted to play without interruptions or outbursts of hostility. Corey's impatience and inclination to lash out made things difficult for everyone, and I couldn't blame my friends for backing away from those circumstances. I understood that, as her sister, I had a responsibility to support and be there for Corey, especially given her struggles. But, to be honest, I needed space to mature, find my own friends, and live my life independently. However, my parents never let me be myself. Whenever I wanted to go something alone or spend time with my friends without Corey, they made me feel awful for even considering leaving her behind. They'd say things like, "Sisters should stick together," or "You need to think about Corey, she's your sister." It was as if they expected me to always choose her over my friends or anybody else, no matter what I wanted or needed for myself. What made things worse was that they never seemed to put these same efforts into assisting Corey comprehend how to change her conduct or develop her social skills. They never sat her down to explain why sharing or being compassionate with others could help her connect with others more effectively. Instead, they seemed to accept that I would fill in all of the gaps in her social life. So, throughout the years, I became Corey's lone buddy by default. Don't get me wrong, I adore Corey. She is family, and I recognize that none of this is her fault. I understand she confronts her own set of obstacles every day, and I can't imagine what it's like to be in her shoes. But, at the same time, do you know how it feels to be the invisible child in a family? My parents' entire world revolved around Corey, with every choice, idea, and money intended to make her life easier and more comfortable. Corey requires ongoing attention and specialized care. My parents have spent a lot of money on her numerous therapies over the years, including physiotherapy to help with her physical coordination, speech therapy to improve her communication, and occupational therapy to help her develop motor skills and independence. She also gets regular checkups, medical tests, and evaluations to track her progress and keep her health in control. The care she requires is considerable and time-consuming. While I fully grasp its significance, it frequently felt as if there was little place for me. One of Corey's specific issues is her lack of impulse control, which makes understanding boundaries difficult. For example, she is obsessed with the color pink and enjoys anything pink. She is instantly drawn to anything in that color. She feels impelled to seize it, hold it, and not let go. It doesn't matter whether it's a pink pocketbook, a teddy bear, a piece of clothes, or someone else's prized possessions. Once it's in her hands, she clings to it, and if anyone attempts to take it away, she bursts into tears, sometimes having a full-fledged breakdown. This tendency has resulted in numerous unpleasant situations, particularly while we are out in public. My parents frequently have to bargain with individuals or buy these pink trinkets from complete strangers simply to get Corey to calm down. I've seen them pay for a variety of strange pink items, some of which are worthless to us but mean everything to Corey at the time. I understand why they do it, and I understand that it's more than a wish for her. It's practically a need over which she has no control. However, watching my parents devote so much time, money, and mental energy to soothing her urges and satisfying her demands has left me feeling forgotten. Furthermore, my parents' approach to parenting Corey has had serious ramifications over the years. Their method of keeping her satisfied has devolved into what I can only describe as a shopping addiction. For Corey, it began simply enough. Every weekend, my parents would purchase her something pink. A toy, a piece of jewelry, or another trinket, to keep her happy and as a bargaining chip for her cooperation throughout the week. My parents would tell Corey that she had to be a good girl, if she wanted them to give her whatever she wanted, and she would instantly agree. What began as a temporary arrangement quickly evolved into a cherished family ritual. These purchases are not inexpensive either. Many of the goods Corey desires are one of a kind or custom-made, which frequently requires a significant investment. For a long time, I didn't think about the cost of all this pink stuff. I thought my parents could afford it. I never questioned how they could afford to continue this habit week after week, year after year. But soon, I discovered something I could not have anticipated. My parents had not been managing their expenses through regular budgeting or savings. They have been committing fraud to cover the rising prices. You see, when I was born, my grandparents established a trust fund for both me and Corey, with equal sums given to us. Corey, who has Down syndrome, was supposed to use the money for her therapies or whatever else she needed, but I was supposed to use mine for college or a down payment on a home. Only my parents had access to these funds, but my grandparents trusted them to handle them carefully. They also made certain that Corey and I were aware of these trust funds from a young age, allowing us to rely on them for financial support. It was a thoughtful present from my grandparents, and I always felt secure knowing that the trust fund would be available when the time came. When Corey reached 18, she received a portion of the trust monies. Since she still lives with and relies on my parents, they have been in charge of managing her money. They've utilized her trust fund over the years to assist pay for her treatments and therapies, which have become more demanding as she's gotten older. The money has helped with everything, from her medical treatment to providing the materials she requires for daily life. I recognized that the money was intended to meet her needs, and I never questioned how it was being spent. When I turned 18, I anticipated to get my half of the trust fund, as promised. I had previously planned to utilize the money for my college tuition. Once that was taken care of, I intended to preserve the remainder for any additional bills that would arise as I approached maturity. I had my future planned out, and I was counting on that fund to help me forge a steady route forward. But little did I know, my hopes would soon be dashed. My grandparents arranged a fantastic 18th birthday party for me last week. They had done the same for Corey when she turned 18, so I had been looking forward to my own celebration for quite some time. They had invited everyone in their family. I was genuinely pleased, surrounded by the people I cared about, and it was one of those days when everything felt just right. Following the cake cutting, my grandparents made an announcement to the entire gathering. They told me how proud they were to see me all grown up and gone to college, and that as a birthday present this year, I would receive the trust fund they had put up for me years before. The entire room erupted in cheers and clapping, with everyone praising me on this incredible gift. I felt a rush of exhilaration and thankfulness come over me as I hugged and thanked my grandparents for everything. But in the midst of all the enthusiasm, I saw that my parents were the only ones who did not appear joyful. While everyone else smiled and congratulated me, my parents seemed unconcerned. They stood off to the side, their faces strained, almost uncomfortable. I could see them exchanging glances, and while they didn't say anything, there was a discomfort to them that was difficult to miss. It struck me as peculiar, but in the excitement of the celebration, I didn't give it much thought. I wanted to enjoy the rest of the party, so I put it to the back of my mind. Later that evening, when we got home from the party, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. My parents appeared uptight and didn't speak much with me. Typically, they were concerned about Corey's health, mood, or anything she needed. But that night, Corey appeared absolutely satisfied, playing with one of her new gifts. Sensing something else was going on, I finally asked my folks if there was anything wrong. That's when my father gave me a serious look and informed me that he and my mother needed to talk to me alone. The tone of his voice immediately sent shivers down my spine. I could see it was serious. We sat together in the living room, and they exchanged troubled looks before my father began to talk. He explained, almost tentatively, that they wouldn't be able to give me my trust fund as my grandparents had planned. I didn't understand what he meant at first, so I asked him to clarify. My father continued, his voice full of shame and despair. He revealed that throughout the years, they had spent all of Corey's trust fund on her. When there was nothing left, they began to utilize the money from my trust fund, which they had access to. With a big sigh, he revealed that 90% of my trust fund was already gone, leaving little for me. I was taken aback as I considered what he had just stated. The money set aside for my future, for my education, was gone. He went on to say that the majority of money had been spent on my sister's shopping habit and the various treatments she required. As his words sank in, a numbness crept over me. My thoughts raced, attempting to figure out how this happened without my knowledge. They had raided my trust fund without informing me, to cover Corey's bills and habits. I questioned why they would do something like this to me. My parents began to justify themselves, their words laced with defensiveness. They informed me that caring for Corey had cost them a lot of money, but they had no choice but to do it. Her needs have always come first. My father discussed the never-ending expenses, the therapies, treatments, and, of course, the innumerable gifts she required every week to stay calm. I contended that they could have ceased buying her all of those items when they learned they were financially taxing. They did, however, highlight that for Corey, these goods were more than just luxuries. They were things that helped her manage and made her world a bit simpler to understand. And for them, every penny spent had been worthwhile. They couldn't simply refuse her. At that point, I felt a rush of rage fill up inside me. I questioned how they could justify spending nearly everything I had saved for my future without even speaking with me. Didn't I matter to them? My father tried to calm me down, stating that I needed to comprehend what they had been through. He discussed the stress they'd felt, the sacrifices they'd had to make as Corey's caregivers, and how difficult it was to satisfy her requirements week after week. My mother nodded, noting that Corey's condition necessitated continual care. And sometimes that meant spending money in ways that were unfair to me but were important for Corey. Both of them felt that because I didn't have any of Corey's ailments, I had an advantage over her, therefore I shouldn't be so greedy with the money. I felt a tear of frustration run down my cheek as I assured them that I wasn't doubting Corey's needs or their decision to prioritize her care. I loved her too. But this was about the lack of honesty, how they had gone behind my back and exploited what was meant to be my future without believing I deserved to know. I informed them that this trust money had been my only source of security, the one thing I felt I could rely on to start my life on my own, and it was now almost completely gone. Instead of addressing how upset and betrayed I felt, they began gaslighting me, turning the subject around on me. They expressed disappointment that I couldn't be more understanding, and that as Corey's sister, I should appreciate that sometimes sacrifices were necessary. They said, "We are all in this together." I was astounded that they wanted me to simply accept it all as a fool. To realize that Corey's needs had to come first, no questions asked. I questioned them why it was always Corey and not me. Did they not want me to do anything in my life? That's when my parents revealed a plan they had for my future, which revolved solely around taking on the task of caring for Corey. They explained that they never cared about my education because it isn't that important. They expected me to step up and help them with Corey's financial and emotional needs. My mother looked at me with a mix of pleading and resignation, saying, "You know, we're getting older, and it's exhausting looking after Corey. We won't be able to do this forever, so we need you to step in." She went on to say that they didn't mind if I went to a local college rather than the college of my choice. She only hoped I'd get a steady job as soon as I graduated so I could bring Corey to live with me. Then she said we could finally rest. Dad advised that I start contributing financially sooner, while still in college, by working a part-time job and sending money home to Corey. It would help Corey have some independence in her life, he told me, by letting her buy whatever it is that she wants and allowing her to maintain the lifestyle we've provided for her. I sat there, stunned, trying to figure out what my folks expected me to do. At that point, I felt completely misled and frustrated. This was not the future I envisioned for myself. It seemed as if my parents expected me to abandon my own aspirations and plans in order to easily transition into their role as Corey's caregiver, without ever asking what I desired for my own life. Finally, I roared at them, my voice quivering with years of accumulated rage and hurt. Have you ever thought about what I want? Or am I just here to live for Corey? You never even thought to ask me what I wanted, did you? All these years, I've been expected to just give, and now you're pushing me to be Corey's caretaker so you can rest. How is any of this fair? My voice trembled as the rage spilled out. You're making decisions for me without even considering what it means for my life. I can't just drop everything for Corey and pretend like my dreams don't matter. All of my bottled up anger spilled out, years of feeling forgotten, years of being told I needed to prioritize Corey, and years of watching them pander to her every whim while I was expected to quietly support from the sidelines. My folks constantly attempt to persuade me that I shouldn't be so selfish and inconsiderate. It was as if they wanted me to conform and embrace a life I had never planned for simply because they believed it was better for Corey. So, since last week, I've been completely ignoring my parents. All I feel for them is contempt. Am I the a-hole for reporting my parents for taking my trust fund and spending it on my sister? Update 1. Wow, this post has gone viral in just a few hours. Thank you for all your advice. I am currently on my way to tell my grandparents everything. Since the trust fund was created with their money, I believe it is critical that I have their support while I confront this matter. After I've explained everything to them, I plan to let my grandparents decide what we should do next. I trust their judgment and know they will have my best interests at heart as we find out how to tackle this together. I had kept my voice shut all this time because I truly believed my folks would finally come around. However, it is evident that they have not. Update 2. It has been 2 weeks since my last update, so I told my grandparents everything. They were as astonished as I was to learn that my parents had utilized my trust fund without my authorization. That same week, my grandparents came to question my parents about what had happened to my trust fund. My grandparents had worked hard to establish the fund for both me and Corey. They were deeply committed to ensuring that we have the financial resources we require for our futures. They were understandably upset when they discovered that my parents had illegally drained the money behind their backs. My parents answered by telling them the same sob story they had shared with me. They recounted, once again, how they had been obliged to spend the money on Corey's care and therapy. They urged my grandparents to explain why they did what they did, as if their rationale would somehow make it all right. But my grandfather would have none of it. He roared at them, his voice filled with fury and amazement. He told them unequivocally that they were accountable for repaying the whole trust fund, regardless of the circumstances or justifications for its use. He was visibly angry and felt betrayed by my parents' conduct. For a moment, I hoped they'd finally accept responsibility and set things right. Then, frightened, my mother came to my grandparents and began pleading with them. She indicated that caring for Corey was difficult, and that her needs were numerous and frequent. She stated that Corey's trust money was insufficient to support the increasing costs of her treatments and ongoing bills. She rationalized taking my trust fund by claiming it helped them care for Corey. And then, in an almost horrible twist of fate, my parents turned against me. They reprimanded me for telling my grandparents everything. They were upset that I had revealed their activities and forced them to face the repercussions. My dad, in particular, was furious. He told me, with a strong edge in his voice, that I should consider myself fortunate since I was born normal, unlike Corey, and that I shouldn't despise her sister so much. It was as if my entire life, my challenges and needs, didn't matter. Everything revolved around Corey. And now I was being punished for not fitting in with the role they had chosen for me. Without thinking, I looked them in the eye and told them straight out that if they didn't give me back the money I owed, I would sue them and make sure they went to jail for their actions. I reminded them that what they did was illegal, and there was no way they could justify it in court. They couldn't prove otherwise that the trust fund was intended for me and only me. My tone was calm, but my comments were plain and firm. I could see the color drain from my parents' faces as they comprehend what I had just spoken. For the first time, I genuinely stood up for myself, and I could see the shock in their faces. They were not used to me being that straightforward. So resolute. Fortunately, my grandparents nodded in accord. They supported me because they knew I was correct. Seeing their encouragement, I persisted, speaking with greater conviction. I told my parents that it didn't matter how much they spent on Corey or what they did for her. Corey was their child, and it wasn't my obligation to give up my future for her. I loved Corey, of course, and I would always be there for her, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my own life, education, and goals just to make her feel cared for. I made it plain that I was tired of always coming second to her, of being overlooked while her needs were always prioritized. I finished by declaring I was done with them. I had had enough of being treated like the invisible child, who was expected to meekly accept whatever scraps were left for her. For the first time in my life, I stood up for myself, and I knew I could never take it back. My parents had pushed me to my limit, and I was not going to allow them to continue to dictate my life. My father instantly disagreed, his voice full of shock and anger, insisting that I couldn't threaten them with jail. He told me that as their child, I should have family loyalty and be willing to support them at all times, especially after everything they had done for me over the years. His statements were intended to make me feel guilty and to remind me of my responsibilities to them. My mother, attempting to ease the situation, even weighed in, proposing that since there was still 10% of my trust fund remaining, I could simply accept it and keep my mouth shut. It felt like they were treating me like a charity case, as if the residual crumbs from my trust fund were all I deserved and I should forget about anything else. But my granddad refused to back down. He came in, his voice stern, and informed my parents that if they didn't agree to give me back the full amount, he would get the best lawyer in town to sue them. The possibility of legal action appeared to have had a significant impact on my parents. They eventually became silent, recognizing my grandfather meant business. After a tense exchange, they reluctantly admitted that what they had done was incorrect. Nonetheless, they begged my grandparents for some time to consider things over. However, the ramifications didn't stop there. My father was furious with me for exposing them to my grandparents and threatening him and Mom with jail time. In his rage, he declared that he never wanted to see my face again. He urged me to leave his house, stating he had had enough of supporting a selfish person like me, someone who could backstab their own family, like this. When my grandparents heard this, they quickly offered to have me move in with them. They assured me that I always had a home with them and that they would help me in every way they could as I worked out my next steps. So, without hesitation, I packed my clothing, gathered my necessary documents, and moved out of my parents' house. Currently, I live with my grandparents. I hate that my parents have just kicked me out, but I'm also relieved to be away from them. I miss Corey a lot. I'm aware that what I did has permanently damaged my relationship with my family. However, I do not regret standing up for myself. Update 3. It's been a month since I last updated. After much pressure and legal threats from my grandfather, my parents finally signed an agreement drawn out by my grandfather's lawyer. The terms were easy. Because they could not repay the entire cash they had taken from me in one lump sum, they would make installments over the next 18 months. This would give them time to pay off the loan gradually, without putting a hardship on their finances all at once. However, the agreement had a vital stipulation. If they failed to make any payment by the agreed-upon date, or if they did not follow through at all, my grandparents and I had the right to initiate urgent legal action. This clause served as a safeguard, ensuring that they couldn't avoid paying me back. My folks are still unhappy with me. They blame me for everything that has happened, and it seems like they are unable to let go of their wrath or humiliation. They still don't understand why I took the actions I did and stood up for myself in such a dramatic fashion. Despite their hatred, my grandma has assured me that none of this is my fault. She told me again today that I did what I needed to do to protect myself and my future, and that I should focus on moving forward now rather than looking back. I see Corey from time to time. She misses me, and I miss her also. She frequently inquires about me, and it is evident that she is unaware of the complete picture. But she understands enough to see that something significant occurred between us. She's noticed that I'm not as present as I once was and that my parents did something to injure me. It's horrible not to be able to help her understand how bad our parents are. Regardless, I'll always be there for her. Ostracized over my inheritance, I sought peace but faced humiliation. Furious, I cut off my sister's rent, exposing my parents' manipulation. I arrived for a family meal, but they remarked, "We weren't expecting you. Go away, loser." I replied, "Okay. But from now on, you'll be paying my sister's rent." They begged, but it was too late. I did not want to go at first. Why would I, given what had happened in the previous years? But something inside me didn't want to hold the hatred forever. My father was turning 57, and while I wasn't their favorite person, I figured I could be the larger man and at least show up. Things had gotten awful ever since I acquired my grandfather's estate. Grandpa and I were close. I spent a lot of time with him while growing up. He was often telling me stories about his early troubles, how he had to fight for all he has. I believe he saw something of himself in me, which is why he left me a large sum of money when he died. This decision did not sit well with either my parents or my sister Olivia. They were outraged that Grandpa had not left them anything, as if it were my fault or something. I attempted to explain that I had nothing to do with it, but they would not listen. After that, nothing remained the same. They treated me as an alien, as if I had stolen from them. They were frigid at family gatherings. Sometimes they didn't even invite me. I maintained my distance. But this time, I decided to try and make things better. I purchased a bottle of my father's favorite whiskey, the costly variety he only drank on exceptional occasions. I even bought him a box of gourmet cigars. Maybe I was stupid to believe that a few nice gifts would change everything. But I had to try. When I arrived at her place, Olivia answered the door. She was the one person who had not fully shut me off. We weren't very tight, but we kept in touch here and there. "Hey, Jeffrey," she said, slightly astonished. "I didn't know you were coming." "Yeah," I responded. "I thought I'd show up for Dad's birthday." She paused for a moment before shrugging and letting me in. As I came into the living room, I noticed a group of family sitting talking and laughing. For a little while, everything seemed normal. But then I saw my parents. My mother's face became paler, and my father's attitude stiffened. The room became quiet. "You," my father growled. "What are you doing here?" I tried to remain cool. "I came to wish you a happy birthday. I brought some presents." He scoffed. "We didn't invite you." My mom shook her head. "Why are you even here? You always bring trouble. Just leave." I could feel my patience running out. I'd come here to make peace. And this was the reaction I received? I glanced around at the other family. They were uncomfortable, as if they were seeing something they weren't allowed to. "Look," I remarked, maintaining an even tone. "I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to celebrate with you." My father snorted. "Celebrate? You're nothing but a loser. You think a few gifts will make up for everything?" That struck a nerve. All those years of being treated as dirt, as if I didn't belong, came flooding back. I clenched my jaw, hoping to keep it together. But then my father pushed it further. "Get out, Jeffrey," he instructed. "We don't want you here." And that was all? Something inside of me cracked. "Fine," I replied, my voice frigid. "I'll go. But guess what? I've been paying Olivia's rent all this time because you couldn't be bothered to help her." "Not anymore. That's on you now." Their expressions froze. It was as if they hadn't expected me to advocate for myself. My mother suddenly hurried forward. "Wait, Jeffrey." "No," I interrupted. "I'm done. You don't want me here? Fine. But you'll regret this." I turned and walked out, leaving the home completely silent. As I approached my car, I could hear them cry from the front door, imploring me to stop. But I did not glance back. I got in and sped away, fury rising in my chest. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to be their punching bag longer. The following morning, my phone burst. Olivia had called me 6 times, left 3 voicemails, and sent numerous texts. I ignored her at first. I needed some distance to clear my mind after what occurred last night. But curiosity got the best of me, so I listened to one of the voicemails. "Jeffrey, it's Olivia. What the hell is going on? Mom and Dad are freaking out, saying you cut me off. They're blaming me for everything. Call me back." I grumbled and threw my phone onto the bed. Of course, they blamed her. When things went wrong, they were usually the first to blame others. I still felt horrible for Olivia. It wasn't actually her fault. I had been assisting her with her rent for the past 2 years because our parents refused to aid her when she was in need. But I was not going to let them guilt me into continuing, especially after how they treated me. Olivia arrived at my apartment approximately an hour later. She did not even knock. She simply barged in. "Jeffrey, what the hell have you been doing?" she asked. "Good to see you too," I murmured, crossing my arms. "I'm serious," she snapped. "Dad called all the relatives and told them you threw a tantrum at the party. Now half the family is pissed at me because they think I'm the reason you stopped paying my rent." I raised an eyebrow. "Wait, what? He told them that?" "Yeah," she replied, throwing up her hands. "They say I must have sided with you against them or something. Uncle Mark called me this morning and asked if I was plotting with you. It's crazy." This was new. I had not anticipated the rest of the family to become involved so quickly. I leaned back against the kitchen counter, trying to take everything in. "Well, Olivia, I'm sorry you got caught in the middle," I told her. "But I'm done being their scapegoat. They've treated me like crap ever since Grandpa's inheritance. They didn't even want me there last night. I'm not going to keep playing nice when all they do is insult me." She crossed her arms and stared at me. "They could have at least talked to me first, you know. I need that money." "I know," I admitted, softening my tone. "But maybe it's time for them to take some responsibility. They're your parents too. Why should I be the one to keep you afloat while they sit on their hands?" Olivia did not respond soon away. I could tell she was split. On the one hand, she knew I was correct. On the other hand, she was torn between her allegiance to me and the pressure from our parents. Eventually, she shook her head. "This is going to get ugly," she grumbled. "I'm ready for it," I said. And things did get ugly. Faster than I thought. By the afternoon, word had spread among the wider family. My cousin Megan, who always liked to play the role of mediator, called me. "Hey, Jeffrey," she said cautiously. "I heard about the fight last night. What's going on?" I gave her the outline, omitting some of the harsher aspects. Megan listened carefully and sighed. "You know they say you ruined the party, right? But honestly, a lot of people are on your side. Uncle Rob thinks your dad and mom crossed the line. And Aunt Lisa told them off for the way they treated you." This was surprising. Aunt Lisa normally avoided family turmoil, so her involvement must have irritated her greatly. "Wow," I said. "Didn't see that coming?" "Yeah," Megan replied. "But Olivia called me earlier, and she's pissed. I think she feels like you threw her under the bus." I massaged my temples. This was turning into a full-fledged family feud. A part of me felt bad. However, another part of me felt relieved. For once, I wasn't the only one feeling their fury. Maybe they'll finally realize how toxic our parents can be. Later that night, Olivia sent me a lengthy text message. She accused me of being selfish and leaving her when she needed me the most. It stung. But I knew she was just acting out under pressure. I did not respond. 2 days later, things erupted again. My father showed up at my workplace. I worked at a downtown marketing business and was astonished to find him standing in the entrance. He wasn't even attempting to mask his rage. "We need to talk," he stated bluntly. "I'm working," I said, my voice calm. You can call me later. No, he replied. We're doing this now. I sighed and let him outside. He didn't spend any time lying to me. You embarrassed this family, he remarked. Do you realize how many people are turning against us because of your stunt? You think you're better than us now, don't you? Better than you? No, I replied. But I'm not going to let you treat me like dirt anymore. I came to your birthday out of respect, and you threw it back in my face. His eyes narrowed. You think you're entitled because of Grandpa's money? Without him, you'd have nothing. That's rich, I replied. You're the one who's bitter about not getting a share. This isn't about respect or family, it's about control. He did not answer immediately, but I could see the rage in his eyes. Finally, he added, You're going to regret this, Jeffrey. No, I replied firmly. You are. He stormed away without saying another thing. As I watched him leave, I understood this wasn't over. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally standing firm. A few days later, I learned of the impact from other relatives. Aunt Lisa called to complain about how my father had gone around attempting to turn the entire family against me. Apparently, he told everyone that I had betrayed the family and cut off Olivia as punishment. But, to my astonishment, some relatives did not believe the narrative. Uncle Rob had plainly told my father, You treated Jeffrey like garbage, didn't you expect consequences? Lisa stated that several others were also beginning to see through the act. They remembered how distant my parents had gotten since the inheritance incident. Some of them were now silently supporting me. However, not everyone was supportive. Olivia had gone all in on our parents, and she wasn't holding back. She posted a passive-aggressive rant on Facebook, which everyone knew was directed at me. Family is supposed to be about support, not conditions. Some people think they can just walk away when it's inconvenient for them. Must be nice to live with no responsibilities. Some of us aren't so lucky. It required every ounce of willpower not to shoot back. My phone was buzzing with messages from cousins asking what was going on. The drama was growing like wildfire, and I was caught in the midst. Olivia returned to my house later in the evening. This time, she appeared fatigued rather than angry. She didn't even bother with greetings. Can we talk? She inquired. I nodded and invited her in. She sank down into the couch and moaned. This whole thing is a mess, Jeffrey. I have people calling me a traitor, others saying I'm too dependent on you. I can't win. What am I supposed to do? Olivia, I understand, I replied. But this isn't just about the rent. It's about the way they've treated me all these years. I came to Dad's party to make peace, and they humiliated me in front of everyone. You think I'm just going to roll over and take it? She gazed down at her hands. I know they were wrong, she said. But they're still our parents. I don't want to be in the middle of this fight. I could tell she was straining, caught between her allegiance to them and the comfort I had provided. I decided to be honest. Look, Olivia, I never wanted to make you choose sides. But I'm not going to let them walk all over me anymore. I've supported you because I care, not because I owe them anything. If they want to be responsible for you, let them. Her eyes were filled with frustration. You don't get it, she retorted. They won't help me. They never have. Without your support, I'm screwed. For a brief minute, I felt guilty. But then I remembered the years of insults. How they had regarded me like an outcast. I was not going to give up my mental health for those who did not appreciate me. I'm sorry, Olivia, I whispered quietly. But I can't do this anymore. She stood and shook her head. Fine. But don't come crying to me when this all backfires. She went without saying anything else. The following day, events took an unexpected turn. Uncle Rob called to ask if I could meet him for coffee. I agreed, curious to know what he wanted. When I arrived, he quickly got to the point. Look, Jeffrey, I know things have been tough with your parents, but I want you to know that you're not alone. A lot of us have seen the way they treated you. It's not right. Thank you, Rob, I replied, drinking my coffee. But I'm not sure what good it does. They're not going to change. Maybe not, he acknowledged. But I think it's time we stop letting them control the narrative. You don't have to fight this fight alone. He went on to say that other relatives were preparing to confront my parents about their behavior. I had not expected this. Most of them normally avoided family conflict, but this time they were taking a stand. That night, Aunt Lisa called me. We just had a meeting with your parents, she stated. It got heated. We told them they needed to apologize to you and start treating you with respect. Of course, your dad was stubborn as hell, but I think we got through to your mom a little. I was stunned. For years, I felt lonely, as if I were the only one who recognized how toxic my parents could be. The family was starting to push back against their actions. Still, I wasn't waiting for an apology. People, including my father, did not change overnight. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get weirder, Olivia sent me a message. It was short and mysterious. "We need to talk. Something's happened." Olivia's message made me nervous. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. I texted her back. "What's going on?" Her reply was immediate. "Come to Mom and Dad's. It's serious." Despite my better judgment, I drove over. I knew I was in an enemy country, but if something was truly wrong, I decided I should at least listen to her. When I arrived, Olivia met me at the door. She had a solemn expression on her face, as if she were bracing herself for something heavy. "They're in the living room," she replied softly. I followed her inside and found my parents sitting stiffly on the couch. They both appeared tight, but there was also a hint of something strange. My father motioned for me to sit down, but I remained standing. "All right," I replied, crossing my arms. "What's this about?" My mother sighed heavily. "We didn't want to tell you this way, but Olivia's in trouble. She's behind on her rent again," my father explained. "We just found out that she might be evicted." I looked at Olivia. She looked aside, biting her lip. "We can't let that happen," my father added. "She needs your help, Jeffrey, just until she gets back on her feet." I stared at them for a time, allowing the words to sink in. Something did not feel right. "How did you just find out about this?" I requested an explanation. "We got a call from her landlord," my mother stated hurriedly. "Too quick." Olivia shifted uneasily and avoided eye contact. My instincts kicked in. She had lied to me previously, and the whole situation reeked of manipulation. "So let me get this straight," I said carefully. "You're telling me that her landlord called you instead of her. And this is the first you're hearing about it?" My father's face tightened. "Look, Jeffrey, this isn't the time to question details. Olivia needs help." I turned to face Olivia. "Is this true? Are you behind on the rent?" She hesitated before shaking her head. "Number, I'm not behind." I felt my jaw clench. "Then why are you all playing this game?" Olivia grimaced. "They thought if you thought it was serious enough, you'd help again. That was it," I snapped. "Are you kidding me? You dragged me here with a fake emergency just to manipulate me into giving you more money?" I turned to my parents. "What is wrong with you people? You couldn't just ask me like normal people." "Jeffrey, don't overreact," my mother said, her tone defensive. "We were trying to protect Olivia. You're the one who cut her off." "No," I snapped back. "I cut you off. Olivia is a grown woman, and if she's in trouble, it's between her and me. But instead of coming to me honestly, you chose to lie. And you wonder why I want nothing to do with you." I turned to face Olivia. "You went along with this?" She seemed embarrassed. "They pressured me. I didn't know what else to do." "Well, congratulations," I replied bitterly. "You all just made things 10 times worse." I stormed out. But I wasn't finished. My rage only escalated on the way home. I'd put up with their manipulation for years, but this was the final straw. Did they want to play games? Fine. I was going to set the record straight. When I arrived home, I began phoning and messaging the family who had been in contact with me. I told them everything, how my parents had lied about Olivia being in danger, how they had tried to guilt me into assisting after humiliating me at the party, and how they had turned the entire situation into a circus. The answer was quick and nasty. Uncle Rob contacted me first. "You're telling me they made that whole story up? Jesus Christ. That's low, even for them." Aunt Lisa became very furious. "I'm done with them," she said. "They've played the victim card for too long. They're toxic, and they've been dragging this family into their mess for years." Word spread immediately. Within a day, the majority of the family understood the truth. The tide had completely changed. Relatives who had been on the fence began to cut off communication with my parents and Olivia. Nobody wants to deal with their deception and manipulation anymore. Olivia texted me and begged me to stop. "Please, Jeffrey, you're losing everyone. They say it's your fault." "My fault?" I said. "You brought this on yourself." For the first time in years, I felt genuinely supported. The family finally realized what I had been struggling with all along. My parents and Olivia attempted damage management, but it was too late. Nobody bought their justifications anymore. It was bizarre. For so long, I'd felt like the black sheep. But suddenly I was no longer an outcast. My parents were. Quite frankly, it seemed like justice. A week later, the aftermath was complete. My parents attempted to rally support from the rest of the family. However, their expectations had not been met. Megan told me that they had even sought out some of their more distant relatives, whom they hadn't spoken to in years, in an attempt to elicit sympathy. They called Aunt Marie, Megan remarked, laughing as she told me. You know, the one who never puts up with anybody's nonsense. Apparently, my father told her a sob story about how I turned everyone against them. He replied, maybe if you weren't such a control freak, your family wouldn't hate you. Then she hung up with him. Hearing that was more satisfying than I want to admit. But the big shock came when I discovered they were attempting to seek assistance from Uncle Peter, the wealthy individual who resided out of state. Peter had always been rather indifferent about family problems, but he was not ignorant. He had seen through my parents' games years before. I later learned that when they phoned him, he did not hold back. Peter told them straight out, Megan explained. Don't call me again. I'm not wasting my time with your theatrics. It was horrible. Every lifeline they attempted to clutch crumbled into dust. The people they formerly ruled had had enough. By the end of the week, my parents were almost completely separated. Olivia attempted to contact a few cousins, but none of them were interested in getting involved anymore. The entire family had cut her off. They're done, Rob informed me. No one wants to deal with their drama. It's just them now, Mom, Dad, and Olivia in their little kingdom of misery. I nearly felt bad for Olivia. Almost. She had decided to side with them and support their lies. Now she was stranded on their sinking ship. A few days later, my father contacted me. I pondered ignoring it, but ultimately chose to respond. I was curious to hear what he would say. Jeffrey, he said after a pause. We need to talk. Do we? I said, my tone icy. We made some mistakes, he said hesitantly. But you've made things worse by turning everyone against us. Don't you think it's time to end this feud? I laughed bitterly. You think this is my fault? You brought this on yourself. You lied to me. You humiliated me in front of my family. Now you're facing the consequences, and you want me to fix it for you. Jeffrey, please. We're still family. Funny, I said. You didn't care about your family when you called me a loser in front of everyone. Now that you have no one left, you want my help? I'm done. He tried to argue, but I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to him. It was the last time I spoke with any of them. I later learned through the grapevine that they were fighting to maintain appearances. With their family ties cut, they had no one to rely on. Olivia, who had previously relied on my support, was now discovering the hard way that our parents had no intention of assisting her. As for me, I felt free. For the first time in years, I was not burdened by their toxicity. I had my life back, and the support of loved ones who genuinely cared about me. My parents and Olivia were left in their self-created realm. There is no one to blame but each other. And honestly, I was fine with that. My mother-in-law and sister called me a freeloader while I secretly paid their bills. They threw me and my son out. They'll regret it. My life was rather straightforward until Jake came around. I worked as a fitness trainer at a neighborhood gym, where I helped others get into shape. It kept me busy enough not to think about the absence of drama in my personal life. Everything changed the day Jake stepped into my gym. Hey, I'm looking to switch up my routine. Got any killer moves to start with? He inquired, his tone light but his stare serious. I gave him a once-over. He wasn't your typical rookie, unsure which machine to try first. No, he appeared to know his way around a gym but was looking for something more. Sure, I said, directing him to a set of weights. Let's see what you've got. The initial session turned into a week. Then a month. Our casual conversations became longer and more personal. Jake owned a modest family restaurant known for its authentic Italian cuisine. It's all about the sauce, he'd explain. And nobody makes it like my mom. He spoke about his mother with admiration and frustration, hinting at strong family ties. He surprised me one afternoon as we finished a particularly strenuous workout. Listen, Emily, I've been thinking, how about dinner at my place? You can meet my mom and try that sauce I keep bragging about. I paused, more out of surprise than disinterest. Yeah, why not? I'm curious if it's as good as you claim. Dinner was cozy. The food was fantastic, and the company was surprisingly comfortable. His mother, Anna, smiled warmly and laughed heartily, but her eyes seemed to size me up with each glance. Sophia, his younger sister, also stopped by. Her presence was more prickly, her remarks crisp and rapid. So, Emily, Sophia began, a sneer flashing on her lips as she examined the muscles I had worked so hard to develop. Jake tells us you're quite the fitness guru. Ever deal with hopeless cases, or do you just make the fit fitter? I chuckled and took her jab in stride. I believe everyone has potential. It's all about finding the right motivation. Jake became a continuous presence in my life. He consistently arrived at the gym at the same time and always found an excuse to talk a bit longer. You know, I never believed in fate or any of that stuff, he admitted one evening as we closed the gym together. But meeting you, maybe I was wrong. His statements were a combination of gruff charm and clumsy earnestness. It was refreshing. Despite the niggling voice in my head telling me to take it slowly, I found myself falling for him, hard and quick, like a rookie carrying too much weight without a spotter. One frigid evening, as we went to our cars, he came to a halt and turned to face me, his demeanor solemn. Emily, I'm not good at this fancy talking, and I don't have a smooth line to throw your way, but I like you, a lot. What do you say we make this official? It was abrupt and honest. No games. There will be no delaying the inevitable. That was Jake, straightforward and all in. I grinned as my heart pounded in my chest. I say yes. Let's see where this goes. And with that, I was no longer merely a fitness trainer at the neighborhood gym. I was Jake's girlfriend, and eventually, his wife. Moving into Jake's mother's house shortly after we married was not exactly what I had envisioned for our happily ever after. Jake explained that it was essential to him because of his familial links. But living with his mother, Anna, and sister, Sophia, was difficult from the beginning. They did not hide their unhappiness with my entering the family, and things became more tense by the day. The house was usually busy, yet I somehow ended up with more than my fair share of responsibilities. After a long day at the gym, I'd go home to an endless list of responsibilities. The old washing machine was a nightmare. It broke down so frequently that I half joked it was personal against me. Nobody else seemed to notice or care, particularly Anna and Sophia. I recall one evening after dinner, I was attempting to fix that dreaded machine when I overheard them conversing in the kitchen. She doesn't even know what she's doing, Sophia said, laughing without lowering her voice. Watch, she'll flood the basement next. Their laughter rang down the corridor, wounding more than I cared to confess. I bit my tongue and concentrated on the task at hand. It was not just the washing machine, it was everything. From cooking to cleaning, my efforts were simply another source of fun for them. Cooking was the worst. Italian cooking was revered in this household, and my attempts were deemed blasphemous. I tried to follow Anna's recipes exactly, but nothing seemed to work. Sophia lurked in the doorway one night while I was struggling with a seemingly simple spaghetti recipe. Is that supposed to look like that? She inquired, a sneer crossing her lips. It's nothing like Mom's. I gritted my teeth and stirred the sauce, which wouldn't thicken. Well, I'm trying my best here. Sophia snorted. Maybe your best isn't good enough. Did you ever think of that? I wanted to respond, to defend myself. But what was the point? Everything would remain the same. Jake appeared to shrink slightly whenever his sister or mother chastised me. He never stood up for me. His quiet was as audible as their laughter. Hey, Emily, just leave it, Jake said quietly later, attempting to avoid confrontation. It's not worth it. Dinner time was a hassle. I had arranged the dishes on the table in the hopes of having a tranquil supper, but it seemed like I was sitting in a lion's den. You know, in Italy, they'd probably ban you from the kitchen for this, Anna joked as she tried my food, and the others laughed along. Yeah, maybe stick to what you know, gym stuff, Sophia would say, distributing the salt as if it were a peace gift I did not deserve. I'd nod, grin, and swallow the hurt, my irritation simmering like the sauce that never worked out. Living with Jake's family made each day feel like a war I was unprepared for. As my pregnancy progressed, the housework, which already felt like it was all on me, became increasingly stressful. Instead of receiving assistance or sympathy from Anna and Sophia, I sensed their hostility grow worse. One afternoon, I attempted to sweep the living room while moving slower than normal due to my increasing tummy. Anna strolled in, regarded me for a bit, and then gave out a sigh of displeasure. Emily, you missed a spot over there, and look at how slow you're moving. This house is going to fall apart at this rate, she observed, pointing to a corner I hadn't yet arrived at. I straightened up, feeling a tightness in my back. I'm doing the best I can, Anna. It's a bit harder with the baby. She scoffed, shaking her head. In my time, we didn't let a little thing like pregnancy slow us down. You need to toughen up. The lack of sympathy hurt, and I bit my tongue to avoid snapping back. Sophia fared no better. Later that day, as I was folding laundry, she entered the room and began flipping through the clothing I had just carefully put. You do know these aren't folded right, don't you? They should be able to stand up on their own, like how Mom taught us. Here, let me show you again. She tossed the shirt she was holding back into the pile, undoing what I had previously done. Then, with precise movements, she refolded the same garment. I felt my frustration increase. Sophia, I appreciate the lesson, but I've folded clothes before. I'm not an idiot. She only raised her brow, a cold smile flashing on her lips. Could have fooled me. But hey, if you're okay with being mediocre, who am I to argue? Her words felt like a slap. For a time, I just stood there, watching her make my efforts appear futile. It was the same with cooking. Every dish I tried was met with criticism or downright ridicule, especially if I tried to create something Italian. One evening, I decided to try again, this time with a basic pasta dish that I believed I had nailed. Sophia arrived into the kitchen just as I was stirring the soup. What's that supposed to be? She inquired, staring into the pot with a doubtful expression. It's spaghetti carbonara. I thought it might be nice for dinner, I added, hoping for a difference in her typical gruff tone. She took a fork, tossed some pasta on it, and tasted it with an exaggerated distaste. Nice? This is what you call nice? I wouldn't feed this to the dog. It's all wrong. I banged the pot's lid down slightly harder than necessary. Well, it's what's for dinner. If you don't like it, you're welcome to make something else. Every day, the tension in the house increased, and Jake's absence exacerbated the situation. He was usually at the restaurant, always busy. When he was at home, he avoided all conflicts. When I tried to tell him about how his sister and mother treated me, he would just sigh and say something like, I know it's tough, Emily, but try to hang in there. They'll warm up to you eventually, just give it time. After giving birth to my kid, I hoped things would improve. But the truth was quite the contrary. I had gained a significant amount of weight during my pregnancy, which became their new source of mocking. Look at how much she's eating, Anna would chuckle as I tried to fuel myself for breastfeeding. Are you feeding a child or a small army? One day, as I was feeding my kid in the living room, I heard Sophia imitate a cow mooing from the kitchen. The sound cut through me. Tears stung my eyes. It was obvious that they considered me as nothing more than a cow, a utility for my son. I reached a breaking point. The relentless ridiculing and frigid treatment at home became unbearable. I needed a place for myself, where I wasn't just the scolded daughter-in-law or the underappreciated wife. That is when I decided to create my own YouTube channel and Instagram page. One morning, while Jake was at the restaurant and Sophia was out shopping, I put up my old camera in the corner of our tight guest room as my new impromptu gym. I'm doing this, I whispered to myself while adjusting the angle. For me. Not for them. I began filming easy training videos that could be done at home, particularly appealing to moms like myself who couldn't always get to the gym. Talking to a camera felt strange at first, as if I were addressing an audience who was interested in what I had to say. However, it soon became my haven. The first several videos were amateurish, with stiff commentary. Hey everyone, it's Emily here, bringing you a quick 10-minute workout, perfect for busy moms. Let's get started. But as time passed, my follower count increased, as did my confidence. I bought a better camera, watched online courses on lighting and editing, and my little project began to take shape, something wholly mine. Sophia barged into the room one afternoon while I was filming a low-impact exercise sequence for a new video. What the hell are you doing? She said, her gaze jumping from the camera to mine. You turning our home into your personal TV show now? I paused the tape, my heart racing, not from the workout, but from the confrontation. Yes, I am actually. It's something important to me. I need something of my own. Sophia grumbled and looked about with scorn. You think you're some kind of star? Please. Get over yourself, Emily. Her words stung, but I was getting better at dealing with her jabs. Well, it's not like I have your approval for anything else around here. I might as well do one thing I enjoy. Sophia rolled her eyes and marched away. But I didn't stop the camera for long. I resumed my session with a stronger voice than before. My digital profile rose, and so did the prospects. Brands began contacting me, offering free things to include in my movies. Then came the offers to sponsor posts. The first time a brand offered me money to promote their product, I was taken aback. I can't believe they're paying me for this? I said to Jake over dinner one night, eager to express my delight. That's great, Emily, he said, his tone preoccupied by his restaurant issues. Just keep it quiet, okay? Mom and Sophia don't need to know about this. As I returned to the dishes, a notice appeared on my phone. Another comment. Another follower. Another step away from their disdain, and toward something perfectly commonplace yet utterly mine. You're doing amazing, Emily. Thanks for sharing your journey. The comment reads, my channel was no longer just a hobby, It was a thriving business, generating more revenue than Jake's floundering eatery. Soon, I was sending him $2,000 each month to cover household expenses, making it appear like his contribution. Despite my accomplishments, Anna and Sophia continued to treat me as a freeloader. She does nothing around here, just prances about making her silly videos. Anna would spit when she thought I was out of earshot. Sophia repeated her mother's thoughts, adding her own remarks about how I should do more housework, like a real woman. Then Jake's restaurant had a hard period. One evening, he approached me, looking more weary than I'd seen him in months. "Emily, the restaurant needs a cash injection, badly. Can you help out?" His eyes were begging. I did not hesitate, transferring $10,000 for what he described as urgent developments. He was truly thankful. But it wasn't long before he started begging for more. "Just another $55,000 for the bills this month," he remarked quietly, almost humiliated. I consented because I could afford it, and he was still my son's father, whom he adored. But, deep down, I sensed the imbalance deepening. Not just financially, but also in our relationship. Life at Jake's family home was always difficult. But it became awful when Sophia married and brought her husband, Mark, into our home. The house was full. And any sense of solitude or tranquility I had created for myself and my baby evaporated suddenly. Anna, never one to mince words, began calling me lazy and a parasite right in front of my face. "You do nothing around here," she'd say, as I struggled to balance my online business and keeping an eye on my baby. "Just taking up space." It didn't help that Sophia was expecting her first child, and Anna made it apparent that they wanted more space, hinting that my kid and I were in the way. "Soon there'll be another baby in the house, and we can't have freeloaders taking up space," Anna remarked one evening, her gaze drawn to my direction. The atmosphere became cooler, and then, just when things couldn't get much worse, Jake stated that he needed to leave town for a few weeks to handle essential restaurant affairs in another city. He packed up and went, hugging me and our baby goodbye, ignorant to the storm he would leave behind. I attempted to keep things normal by taking my son to school and finishing my videos in the park. However, the day everything actually went apart began like any other, until it didn't. After picking up my son from school, we walked home and spoke about his day. But when we turned the corner, my stomach fell. Our stuff was stacked up on the front doorway, including suitcases, bags of clothes, and even my son's toys. Confused and heartbroken, I rang the doorbell. Anna and Sophia approached the window with chilly looks, unmoved by the sight of a mother and kid stranded outside. They opened the door just enough to speak through, but not enough to let us in. "You need to find somewhere else to stay," Anna stated, her voice stern and uncompromising. I looked at her shocked. "What are you talking about? What about Jake? What will I tell him?" I asked, my voice rising with fear and rage. Sophia chuckled in a nasty, cutting tone. "Tell him whatever you want. He's not here to care, is he?" I frantically tried phoning Jake, but my calls remained unanswered. I had no alternative but to sink deeper into despair and hatred. With no other options, I gathered our belongings and secured a room at a neighboring motel. Sitting in that sterile, darkly lit room with my confused and upset son, I felt something shift inside me. This was more than simply a brief getaway. It was a forced eviction from a life I could no longer bear. I had just finished unpacking our things when my phone vibrated with a new message. It came from Sophia. That was strange. We rarely interacted directly, especially since the fallout. Her message was surprisingly cheerful. "Thought you might want to see what your beloved husband has been up to. A link is also provided." My curiosity piqued. My anxiety increased in my chest. I clicked the link. It redirected me to a social media page with images of Jake. But not on a work trip. The photos showed him cozying up to another woman, having candlelight meals and strolling down the beach with his arms wrapped around her. What is the newest photo's timestamp? Just yesterday. I sat there numb, my phone slipping slightly from my grip as the realization dawned on me. Jake wasn't only away for business. He was living a completely different life, without us. Anger, hot and bitter, welled up inside me. But before I could drown in it, I felt a gentle tug on my sleeve. "Mommy, are you okay?" My son's sweet voice, filled with sincere compassion, drew me back from the edge. I feigned a smile and scooped him up in my arms. "Yeah, buddy, I'm okay. Just a little tired, that's all." I sat there, staring at the television, a mix of rage and betrayal running through me. All this time, I had been the financial backbone for Jake's faltering restaurant and his ungrateful family, who had essentially discarded me and my baby like garbage. And here he was, leading a double life, at my expense. My phone buzzed nonstop for the next week with Jake's calls. When I eventually spoke, his voice was filled with false worry. "Emily, where are you guys? I heard about what happened. You should come back. We have bills to sort out, and the restaurant needs more funding." His statements made my blood boil, but I maintained a neutral tone. "Sure, Jake. We can discuss it. I'll come by tomorrow." "Great. I really think it's best to handle these things in person," he said, relieved. After hanging up, I felt a chilly determination descend over me. He had no idea I knew about his affair. And he had no idea I had no intention of being the forgiving wife who paid his debts. Tomorrow's meeting would be pivotal, and I was prepared. Dropping up my son at school that morning felt like the quiet before the storm. As I traveled to my mother-in-law Anna's house, where Jake, Anna, and my pregnant sister-in-law Sophia would be waiting, my stomach churned with nervousness and determination. When I arrived, Jake appeared relieved, if not delighted to see me. Unlike Anna and Sophia, whose expressions were filled with dissatisfaction. I quickly dug out the divorce papers from my suitcase and presented them to Jake. As he scanned the paperwork, his eyes widened in disbelief. Anna and Sophia smirked, believing it was their victory. But when I turned to face them, the smirk evaporated instantly. "Don't be too quick to celebrate," I cautioned, my voice calm but sharp. "You've been living off my efforts all this time." Jake's face dropped as he confessed to them. "The restaurant, it isn't doing well. It hasn't been for a long time." Anna and Sophia's joy faded, replaced by horror and rage. They immediately turned on him, their earlier delight transforming into wrath. "You've been keeping this from us?" Anna yelled. Sophia yelled, "How could you let this happen?" They were angry not at Jake's lies, but at the loss of their financial safety net. Sophia, the arrogant one, scoffed at me. "Well, since Jake makes less than you, he'll just have to file for alimony. How's that for justice?" Jake perked up and nodded enthusiastically, as if he had just discovered a way to win. I nearly chuckled at the stupidity. "That's where you're wrong, Sophia," I corrected, turning to face them both. "And Jake, you won't see a cent from me, not for alimony, not for anything." Jake's arrogant grin vanished. "What? That's not how this works." "Oh, but it is," I answered. "Because I know about the affair." His face lost its color. "How did you—" I tilted my head, pretending innocence. "Your sister sent me everything, pictures, dates, and locations." I gestured to Sophia, whose face had turned pale. "Thanks to her, I have all the evidence I need." The room burst in turmoil. A flurry of accusations, denials, and frantic explanations flew between them. I let them sink in their own muck for a time before I spoke out. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, my voice frigid. "I'm taking back everything I paid for." The room became silent. Every appliance, every piece of furniture, everything. As truth dawned on them, their arguments came to an end. I'd previously arranged for movers. Anna and Sophia worried as they began carrying away the refrigerator, washing machine, flat-screen television, and even the beautiful blender I had purchased for them last Christmas. "You can't do this?" Anna exclaimed, gazing helplessly. "We need those things." I caught her gaze, my tone steady but not harsh. "I did this? And I need them too." The movers kept working, cleaning out about half of the house. As I watched them remove the last of my belongings, I felt lighter than I had in years. A weight lifted from my shoulders. I was no longer obligated to this house, these people, or their deception. I returned my gaze to Jake, who appeared little and forlorn, his hopes for quick money dashed. "Take care of your sister and mother, Jake. That's your job now," I murmured politely, turning to go. As I walked away, I realized it wasn't just a physical departure. It was my final step out of their deceptive clutches, a step toward regaining my life and ensuring a better future for my son and me. Overall, the divorce was a relief rather than a hardship. I battled for compensation for Jake's adultery and obtained alimony for our son. My lawyer handled everything, making the procedure run as smoothly as possible given the circumstances. Jake's family's lives changed considerably as well. Without my financial backing, his restaurant went bankrupt and couldn't survive. The family house was sold to pay off debts, demonstrating their unsustainable lifestyle. Meanwhile, Anna and Sophia scrambled to contact me, their messages a combination of apologies and desperate begs for aid. Despite everything, I couldn't allow myself to be drawn back into their madness. I immediately blocked their numbers. Sophia's husband abandoned her, and now the entire family, Jake, his mother, his sister, and her child, is crowded into a small rented apartment. They created this difficult position for themselves. In contrast, life for me and Alex is improving. We've fallen into a comfortable routine in our own rented flat, which feels more like home every day. My YouTube channel and Instagram page have taken off, resonating with women, particularly new mothers, who are striving to get back into shape. Seeing the beneficial impact of my work has sparked a new idea. Create online fitness courses designed exclusively for postpartum mothers. I'm enthused about the possibilities and the opportunity to assist others who have been in my position. There was a lot to accomplish, but for the first time in a long time, the future appeared bright and full of possibilities. I had a deep feeling of serenity here, in our tiny sanctuary, with my sons laughing booming off the walls. We had made it through the storm. And now was our turn to shine. I stopped babysitting for my Sil due to poor health. She didn't understand and even accused me of stealing money and even sued me for defamation. For the past 2 years, I, Arya, 33F, have been the primary babysitter for my sister-in-law Gui, 37F. Her children, Mia and Noah, were adorable, and despite Guiofir's entitled demeanor, I really enjoyed spending time with them. I recall when Mia was a toddler and Noah was a newborn. I would spend hours with them while Guiofir did whatever she wanted. I would play games with Mia, assist her with her arts and crafts, and even read books to Noah. It was a lot of fun. Even though I didn't have my own children, I became really devoted to them. However, things began to alter a few months ago. I was diagnosed with a chronic disease, which affected me more than I anticipated. I had to dramatically change my lifestyle. I used to be full of energy, constantly doing something, whether it was running errands or assisting with family matters. But suddenly, my body couldn't keep up with the speed. I was continuously exhausted, and even basic things felt like mountains I had to conquer. The doctor gave me severe advice. I needed to reduce physical and mental stress. At first, I attempted to ignore it, hoping to get through. But it rapidly became evident that this was not something I could just dismiss. Some days, I couldn't even get out of bed without feeling absolutely exhausted. So, regrettably, I informed Gui that I would no longer be able to babysit regularly. I described everything, how my health had changed and how I needed to prioritize self-care. I wasn't seeking compassion, but rather understanding. But instead of providing the assistance I expected, Guiofir snapped. I vividly recall her precise words. "What do you even do all day?" It stung. I felt as though I had been slapped. But I tried to remain cool. I wasn't just lounging around all day, I was in constant pain and exhausted, which she couldn't understand. Yet here she was, making it appear that I was simply being lazy. It hurt. She went on to add that babysitting her kids wasn't even difficult, and that I was selfish for not assisting. I attempted to explain again, but reasoning with Guiofir is like talking to a brick block. She didn't listen. No matter what I stated, she was convinced I was exaggerating. I couldn't keep responding to her, so I decided to stop and hope she'd let it go. But she didn't. Every few days, she'd message me, wondering when I'd start babysitting again or expressing her desperate need for assistance. I felt like I was being guilted into giving in. At first, I tried to be strong and stick to my decisions. I was really concerned about my health and realized I needed to listen to my body. But after a few weeks, I began to have a creeping sensation of shame. I kept thinking of Mia and Noah. They were really sweet, and I felt like I was leaving them. It made me doubt myself. Was I being selfish? Perhaps I was simply overreacting to my condition. Perhaps I could still help out a little, just not as much as before. But then I'd remember how my body felt after overdoing it. That notion would bring me back to the facts of the situation. It wasn't only about me anymore. It was about my health, well-being, and my ability to care for myself over time. I didn't want to end myself in a worse situation because I felt guilty. In the end, Gui did not respond as I had expected. She never apologized or acknowledged how my health was hurting me. Instead, she sulked for several weeks. I didn't hear anything from her, other than the occasional passive-aggressive remark. It was difficult to deal with, but I knew I needed to keep my distance for my own safety. A month later, my husband and I received an invitation to a family dinner at my in-laws' residence. I honestly had mixed thoughts about going. I hadn't seen Guiofir since our last furious argument, and the prospect of her approaching me again made my stomach turn. But it was family, and I didn't want to cause any problems, so I agreed to go. I hoped things would be cordial and that Gui would have had the opportunity to reflect on her actions. Of course, that did not happen. I could feel the tension in the air from the moment we stepped through the door. Gui wasted no time making me the center of attention in the worst way possible. She greeted us with her smug look, which made me feel like she was already planning something. As we sat down at the dinner table, everyone was conversing, catching up, and generally having fun. It appeared to be a usual family dinner, until Guiofir decided to speak up. "So, Arya, she murmured. Are you still too sick to help out with my kids, or is it just an excuse because you're too lazy to get off the couch? The room went completely silent. I could feel my face burning as I struggled to remain calm. I'm not one to make a spectacle, but the comment hit me right in the gut. I had not informed my family members about my situation. My heart was beating, and I noticed everyone at the table shifting uneasily in their seats. I took a long breath and responded, attempting to keep my voice calm. I've already explained my condition to you, Gui. It's not an excuse. I'm just trying to take care of my health. She did not even flinch. Instead, she smiled and remarked, Health, huh? Maybe babysitting would do you some good. Get you off your pity train. She chuckled as if she had just told the best joke of the century, while the rest of the table exchanged uneasy glances. Then the rest of the family members began asking me what had happened, and I had to tell them everything. I was outraged, but I didn't want to exacerbate the situation, especially in front of my in-laws. I merely gazed at my plate and clenched my fists beneath the table. I knew I had to maintain my composure, but inside I was furious. I wanted to say so many things, like how she had no idea what I was going through and how her lack of empathy was truly mind-boggling, but I held my tongue. Fortunately, my husband was not having any of this. He rushed in and defended me before I could say anything. Gui, that's enough, he remarked, his voice stern yet calm. You can't talk to Arya like that. She's been through a lot, and you need to respect her boundaries. Even with his help, it appeared that the harm had been done. Gui was not one to back down lightly, and it didn't take long before she began making passive-aggressive remarks. I just don't get it, she told me with a straight face. It's not like I'm asking you to do anything hard. Babysitting is just watching the kids for a few hours. I don't understand what the big deal is. Everyone else at the table simply stared at their food, hoping that the conversation would cease. But it did not. Gui continued to press. Maybe if you actually helped out, you wouldn't be so tired all the time. At this moment, I was finished. I was about to snap, but I did not want to cause a scene. So I took a big breath, feigned a smile and said, Gui, I've already told you that I can't babysit on a regular basis right now. If you don't understand that, perhaps we should just leave it at that. She didn't say anything after that, just looked at me curiously. I attempted to dismiss those ideas and concentrate on the fact that I had stood up for myself. But it was difficult not to feel insignificant in the face of Gui's complete disregard for my sentiments. The rest of the evening was as miserable as you might expect. Gui maintained her distance, but the tension in the air was strong, and I felt unable to relax. Unfortunately, her resentment did not stop there. Oh no, it got much worse. A few days after the family meal, I was sitting at home, trying to relax after another long day, when there came a tap on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I opened the door, I was surprised to see a police officer standing on my porch. My heart sank into my stomach as I struggled to make sense of what was occurring. I stood there in full shock as the police officer claimed that he was coming to investigate a theft report. Apparently, Gui had filed a lawsuit accusing me of taking money from her home. The words barely registered in my head at first. A theft report? Against me? I was unable to make sense of it. I immediately called Gui to try to acquire some information. My hand shook as I held the phone to my ear, my heart thumping in my chest. The phone rang for a few seconds before she answered. Gui, he replied. What is going on? Why are the police at my door? Why would you accuse me of stealing from you? She wasted no time flinging insults at me. You think you can just ditch my kids and get away with it? She said over the phone. Maybe this will teach you not to mess with me. I'm not going to let you get away with anything. I was shocked. This woman had truly gone to this length to make my life miserable. The claim was ridiculous, and I couldn't believe I was actually having this conversation. But it wasn't about reason or logic for her, it was about vengeance. She appeared to be eager to go to any length to punish me for setting boundaries and asserting my rights. I tried to remain calm, but my rage was boiling over. Gui, I muttered through clenched teeth, I didn't steal anything from you, this is insane. Why would you even make something like that up? But she laughed, as if she relished seeing me upset. I'm not talking to you about this anymore, she said abruptly, hanging up the phone. I stood there in shock, staring at my phone. How could somebody be so petty and malicious? I had no idea how to digest what had just happened. The police officer was standing there, and Gui had gone as far as accusing me of stealing. Stealing. It was ridiculous, and yet here I was, forced into this nightmare. Fortunately, the police officer recognized that something was not adding up. After a little talk, he had begun to see through her tale. Maybe I was an easy target for her. But I had no motivation, no opportunity, and certainly no experience with anything like this. In fact, I had been home the whole day the money allegedly went missing, and I had a solid alibi. The officer even checked our security camera to verify my whereabouts. It wasn't long until the entire situation imploded. The officer was courteous and professional, apologizing for any difficulty and assured me that everything had been resolved. But the harm had already been done. Gui had attempted to drag me through the mud, and I had to cope with the consequences of her petty behavior. Despite the fact that I was not in trouble, the entire experience left me shaken. Her scheme backfired spectacularly. When Mark found out about the police complaint and what Gui had done, he was furious. I'd never seen him that angry before. He'd always been the calmer, more patient one in their relationship, but this was the final straw. From what I could tell, he hadn't been pleased with her recent behavior, but the theft claim appeared to be the tipping point. It felt like something inside him cracked. He marched up to her and demanded she apologize to me. Of course, Gui refused. She was too proud, headstrong, and, frankly, humiliated to accept her mistake. I only learned about all of this after Mark came to my house to apologize on her behalf. To be honest, I wasn't delighted with their relationship. It seemed strange to be caught in the middle of their turmoil. But at the same time, I felt vindicated. She had tried to ruin my life with her falsehoods, and the consequences were now catching up with her. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that things were finally unraveling for her. The saddest thing for Gui was when news of the police report reached the school where she worked. Gui had been a teacher for years, and I believe she had always assumed her position was secure. However, after the school learned about the fabricated theft claim and the participation of the police, things began to fall apart for her in a dramatic manner. While no legal charges were filed against her, the fact that she had contacted the authorities in such a petty and vindictive manner was enough to ruin her reputation. I couldn't help but feel bad about how much I enjoyed watching her life collapse. I knew it wasn't polite to enjoy someone else's demise, but after everything she'd put me through, it almost felt justified. It was as if the cosmos was finally serving her a dose of her own medication. For so long, she moved around with a sense of entitlement, as if the world revolved around her. And suddenly, everything was falling apart. Of course, none of this was without consequences for me. As much as I wanted to move on and leave this mess behind me, it seemed like every time I took a step forward, I was drawn back into the drama. I began to feel sorry for the folks in our family who were caught in the middle, trying to decide which side to take. A few family members felt sorry for her and suspected that I had exaggerated or misread her intentions. But for the most part, they supported me. Still, there were awkward occasions at family gatherings when I had to act as if nothing was wrong when, in reality, things had gotten exceedingly strained. Gui's life has fallen apart, and it appears that she is blaming everything on me. She lost it during another one of our family confrontations, pointing her finger and yelling that I was to blame for everything that had gone wrong. She exclaimed that if I hadn't been so theatrical during babysitting, none of this would have occurred. It seemed as if everything that had gone wrong in her life was now my fault. But I had already learned to maintain my composure. I did not participate in the yelling match. Instead, I answered calmly, "Gui, I didn't make you mock me at dinner. I didn't force you to file a false police report. You did this to yourself." It felt strangely empowering to speak those words. For once, I was not going to let her twist the story or make me feel like I was wrong. I won't lie. As I watched her spiral, I felt a little sense of justice. Seeing someone so toxic face the repercussions of their actions seemed natural, even if I didn't take joy in her suffering. I'd endured enough of her harshness. I had to tell myself that this wasn't some small victory for me. It was merely the result of her own actions. The fact was, I never wanted to be a part of this drama in the first place. I merely requested some space to concentrate on my health and well-being. But Gui interpreted that request as a personal attack. Everything that followed, her allegations, lies, and attempts to tarnish my reputation, was entirely her doing. I was not the one who escalated things. But I wasn't going to back down. Gui no longer talks to me, and honestly, I'm perfectly okay with that. If she cannot respect my boundaries, we cannot recover our relationship. I've realized that certain individuals are simply not intended to be in your life, no matter how close you were before. I have moved on from the drama and am finally at peace with it. The only thing I regret, if you can call it that, is the impact this entire situation has had on her children. Mia and Noah were completely innocent throughout all of this, and I have always loved them as if they were my own. I remain hoping that kids will grow up to be kinder and more understanding than their mother. I do not want children to inherit her bitterness and venom. However, the situation does not end here. Gui now faces serious consequences for making a fraudulent police report. I honestly didn't expect her to be held accountable, but it appears she is being investigated for making a fraudulent allegation. It appears that she may be required to pay a fine or face some type of penalty. Frankly, it could not have occurred to a more worthy individual. I'm not sure what the legal implications will be for her, but it appears that she'll have to deal with it one way or another. Of course, even as the walls close in on her, she refuses to accept responsibility for her deeds. Gui began calling me in an uncharacteristically out-of-touch manner. She's actually asking me to pay her fine. Yes, you read that correctly. She wants me to pay for the mess she made, as if I owe her anything after everything she's put me through. It's truly comical, and I'm just sitting here shaking my head. At first, I had no idea how to reply. It's not like I want to go back and forth with her. Every time we communicate, I feel like I'm taking a step back in my healing journey. But this was different. This was her attempt to manipulate me one more time. And I was not having it. I've spent the last 2 months focusing on myself and regaining my peace. And this phone call felt like a slap to the face. She had no right to ask for anything after how she treated me. But then she brought her children into it and attempted to make me feel bad. I don't know what to do now. Do you have any suggestions? Update. 1. Hello, folks. I know some of you have asked about my condition, and I'd like to clarify that I don't feel comfortable posting too many specifics about it here. I hope you understand. But I will admit that it causes me to feel physically weary pretty quickly. I'm still getting used to it, and it's been a challenge. I'm learning to pace myself, but it's not always simple to explain, especially given other people's expectations. A couple of you also wondered how I ended up babysitting for Gui, so I thought I'd tell you a little bit about it to provide some perspective. Several years ago, I lost my job. To be honest, I had a difficult time. I'd been working in a tough capacity that frequently left me feeling burned out. After losing that job, I was at a crossroads, wondering what to do next. I didn't want to rush into another full-time job that would be equally hectic, so I decided to take some time to figure things out. Around that time, I acquired a part-time remote job that proved to be a true blessing. It's flexible, pays well, and I can work from home, which gives me more control over my schedule. Honestly, it's been a terrific balance that I've been able to maintain. Even though it is only part-time, my husband has an excellent job, which helps. We've been able to maintain a decent financial situation together. So, things worked out, even though it wasn't the job route I had planned. Now that I was working from home and had more spare time, I began looking for activities to occupy my days. That's how I ended up babysitting for Gui. You know, Gui and I have always been related, but our relationship has had its ups and downs. She's not the easiest person to get along with, but when I lost my job, I had a lot of free time and figured I could help out with her kids. It began when she had to leave for a trip with her pals and her regular babysitter canceled at the last minute. She asked if I could step in, and I agreed, despite my reservations about the concept. I assumed it would be something transitory, but it eventually became my second job. She kept asking me to babysit, even when she wasn't on a trip. Her children, Mia and Noah, are wonderful, and I actually enjoy spending time with them, so I didn't fear it. But this is when things began to become difficult. What began as a courtesy quickly became something that seemed like an obligation. Gui grew to rely on me more and more, and before long, I was babysitting on a regular basis. I didn't mind at first, but after a while, it felt like I was doing it for her convenience rather than out of a real desire to assist. It wasn't long before I was juggling a part-time job with babysitting, which was okay when I was feeling well. However, when my situation began to worsen, I felt stretched too thin. Looking back, I can't help but wonder whether I should have established boundaries earlier. I guess I wanted to be the kind, helpful family member who could do everything. However, in the end, it left me exhausted. It's acceptable to say no. Even if someone else is vying for your time and attention, it is okay to prioritize your own needs. Update 2. Hello folks, I realize it's been a while, but I finally have some updates. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who contacted out and offered support during the crazy situation with Gui. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, but I'm doing fine now. So here's where things are. Gui did wind up paying a fee for filing a fraudulent police report, which surprised me given how swiftly it happened. She was further warned that repeating such behavior could result in more serious repercussions. To be honest, I'm glad she had to face some consequences for the disaster she created. It seemed like justice. However, I am not exactly celebrating it. I believe Gui would prefer to pretend nothing happened and go on, but that isn't how this works, right? The more shocking development, however, involves Gui and Mark. They are now separated. That came as a tremendous shock to the family. I never imagined it would come to this, but things definitely reached a breaking point for them. Mark was enraged when he learned about everything Gui did, especially the phony report. That was the last straw for him, and it wasn't long before they began living apart. They have been working on their relationship, however. According to what I've heard, they're in counseling, and Mark appears to want to attempt to make things better. I'm not sure what will happen to them in the long run, but there's still a chance they can work things out, if both of them are ready to put in the effort. At this point, I've removed myself from their drama. It's difficult to care when you've been wrongfully accused of something you didn't commit. Gui still blames me for all that transpired. She refuses to speak to me, which is actually rather reassuring. I don't think I could take much more of her toxicity. There's just so much a person can take until they have to keep their own peace. And right now, I'm doing everything I can to focus on my health and happiness. But, matter how toxic things were, I felt horrible for her. I understand her actions were the result of her personal problems, but that doesn't excuse what she did to me. I learned the hard way that just because someone is kin does not imply they have your best interests in mind. Even if you strive to help them, some people will manipulate and take advantage of you. And at some point, you must draw a line. The fact that I can no longer see Mia and Noah has made things a little more difficult. I miss those children. They were an important part of my life for a long time, and despite the difficulties with Gui, I actually enjoyed spending time with them. They're both brilliant and sweet children. It's weird not to be a part of their life anymore. I know they miss me, but I'm not sure if I'll see them again. Gui has made it clear that she wants nothing to do with me, and I do not want to overstep my boundaries. Update 3. Hello, everyone. I know it's been almost a month since my last update, but I finally have some new content for you. A lot has happened, and I feel like I've been on a roller coaster recently. Thank you to everyone who has reached out to me. Your warm words and support mean everything to me. So, let us start with Gui and Mark. Believe it or not, they're back together now. Yeah, I was startled too. Given all that had happened, the drama, the accusations, and everything else, I assumed that was the end of their relationship. However, they managed to resolve the situation. It's bittersweet for me. As glad as I am that they are finding a path forward, I still haven't seen Mia or Noah. Honestly, I miss those children. I spent a lot of time with them, and they became an important part of my life. But with everything that happened, I can't seem to find a way back into their life. I know Gui has made it clear that she no longer wants me connected, and I do not want to break any limits. But I can't stop feeling like I'm losing out. I still think about them all the time and hope they are doing well. On a personal note, my illness has deteriorated in recent weeks. I won't go into too much detail, but let's just say I've been battling more physically. I was doing okay for a while until I had some flare-ups that brought me down. It's been a challenging few weeks, and there were times when I wondered how much longer I could continue. I was fatigued, and there were days when getting out of bed seemed impossible. I've been seeing my doctor more often and changing my treatment plan. Slowly but surely, I'm feeling better. But, I'm not going to lie, there's an underlying concern that things could turn terrible again at any point. I simply need to take it one day at a time and be gentle to myself. I'm grateful that my hubby has been so supportive throughout this. He's been an incredible rock for me, and I'm not sure what I'd do without him. Anyway, that's where I am right now. I'm grateful for the help I've received, and I hope everyone is doing well. I'll let you know if anything more happens, but for now, I'm simply taking it one day at a time. Thank you again for being there for me. It truly means the world.